Thank you, Chair. We'll start with Secretary Moss,
Present.
Director Sam Asefa,
Present.
Public Member Frank Cardenas,
Here.
Deputy Secretary Milwaukee Schwartz,
Present.
Chancellor Juan Sanchez Munoz, Deputy Secretary Virginia Jameson,
Present.
Secretary Yana Garcia,
Present.
joining virtually, Public Member Nicole Capretz,
Present.
Secretary Tokes Amashakan, be joining shortly, as well as Associate Secretary Jim Sunin. Okay. We'll update the roll when they arrive. We have quorum.
Great. Thanks. So Matt, could you continue with sharing today's public comments?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for everyone joining us today, whether in person, online, or by phone through the Zoom webinar platform, or where the meeting is being live streamed on SGC's YouTube channel or Cal EPA's live webcast. I'm here to provide some information to help guide us all through the process for a hybrid meeting, which we have designed with the intention of maximizing access by members of the public. For those joining the webinar online via Zoom or by phone, please note that your microphone is automatically muted when you join. In order to minimize the risk of background noise, you will not be able to unmute your phone yourself. For those joining online via Zoom, please note that the webinar platform does not enable video for attendees, so we will not be able to see you. If you need technical assistance during the meeting or have a question about the meeting process, there are a few ways to contact us. If you're using the online Zoom webinar, the best way is using the Q&A function, which several members of the SGC team are monitoring, and they may remove disruptive or threatening content. If you have joined by phone and you have access to email, please email sgc.info@sgc.ca.gov. If you do not have access to email, you may text or call 916-634-3359. If you plan to make in-person public comment, you must fill out a comment card provided at the table near the back of the room. Please fill out the public comment card to indicate your name and the item on which you wish to comment. Please bring your comment card to the table to my left with the sign for collecting public comment cards. When the chair opens the public comment period for the item, we will read the names of those that have submitted a form for that item. When we read your name, please line up by the podium in the order in which I have called your name. When it's your turn to speak, I will call your name to the podium. If you plan to make remote public comment, you must be joining the meeting via Zoom, either through your desktop, laptop, or phone. To make a public comment, visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings and complete the public comment form linked there. You'll need to complete separate forms for each item on which you wish to speak. You may complete a form at any time during the meeting. When the chair opens the public comment period for the item, we will read the names of everyone who has submitted a form for that item. When you hear your name in the list, please raise your hand. To do this online in the Zoom webinar, please click Raise Hand under the Participants menu. You can find that at the bottom of your screen. To raise your hand by phone, you can press *9. When it's your turn to speak, a member of our team will unmute your microphone. If you're online, you will see a window pop up alerting you that the host is unmuting you. You will need to click the option to approve unmute before you speak. After that, you may begin your comment. If you're on the phone, you'll hear a recorded message alerting you that your line is unmuted. Please begin your comment after you hear that message. If you're unable to complete the form but would like to make a comment, please email sgc.info@sgc.ca.gov. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. Speakers requiring or using translation services are allotted 4 minutes to facilitate full participation. A timer will be screen shared. Please monitor the timer and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Whether you're online or on the phone, you'll be notified when your time is up. After that, we will mute your microphone. You do not need to take any additional action once we mute your microphone. Thank you for all the participation. I will hand it back to the chair.
Great. Thanks, Matt. We will now move to item 3, which is the approval of the April 24, 2024 meeting minutes. I want to remind my colleagues that you need not have attended these meetings to vote on the minutes adoption, but you may abstain. We'll have an opportunity for council discussion, then followed by public comments. With that, Matt.
Thank you. We have no public comment on this item.
Great. We'll now take a vote. First, I need a motion and a second to approve the April 24, 2024 meeting minutes.
Seconded.
Second.
Nicole?
To confirm, the motion was moved by, okay, Chancellor Munoz, and the second was, I believe, Deputy Secretary Schwartz. Did you ring up on the, oh, sorry, Virginia Jameson. Thank you. Secretary Garcia,
Yes.
Secretary Moss,
Yes.
Secretary Omashakin,
Yes.
Director Acefa,
Yes.
Public Member Cardenas,
Yes.
Deputy Secretary Schwartz,
Yes.
Associate Secretary Jim Sunin, Chancellor Munoz, Deputy Secretary Jameson,
Aye.
Public Member Capretz. Nicole, I believe you were on mute for that. If you could unmute and log your vote.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you. We got you. Motion passes.
Great. Moving on to item 4, with mixed emotions, I would like now to introduce Executive Director Lynn Bangkok Libert for this item, for the Executive Director's last report with SGC. Following her presentation, we'll have the opportunity for council discussion and public comments. But before Lynn gets on, I just want to say a couple of words. We both started almost 3 years ago at the same time. The incredible transformation that she has made on SGC is self-evident in a lot of the changes that we've seen and the effect that she has made on this council, especially on the programs, initiatives, some of them cutting edge, some of them daring, but all of them programs and actions and investments that are really transforming state government. Lynn came in, hit the ground running, laid out immediately a 6-month plan. Not only that she executed that, but she actually surpassed mine. I think council's expectation in terms of the map, how she mapped out what the next stage of SGC's historically effective, but where we are today in the context of not only climate, the economy, or politics and equity issues. And she really charted a path for the organization that has truly transformed our work and made our work that much easier as well. A lot of new initiatives that are typically we don't associate with what government does. She expanded that in terms of how we address the most pressing issues with equity focus, that also not looking at today, but sort of future looking. And talk more about it towards the end, but I saw firsthand and upfront in terms of organizational change that she helped make. And I think some of your legacy is not just the programmatic changes, but incredible stuff you've built over the last 3 years. I know Frank needed some Kleenex, but I'm going to jump on him and ask him if he wants to say a few words. But I just thank you on behalf of the council for the work you've done. You'll be missed here at this body, but the legacy you've left, and most importantly, incredible stuff that you've built, help SGC continue its transformative work. That I'm going to put actually Frank on the spot.
I expected this would come at some point. I am on the spot, but that's maybe that's best because it's just it's just us. Never a box of tissues when you really need it the most. I told Lynn this personally up here a while ago. Now I'll just say what everyone knows out loud. I have never seen anyone like you. I have never seen in full display, right, for everyone to learn from, right, and enjoy. The total suite, man, the whole panoply of skills that are prerequisite to serving other people. The way you have. and I've tried to pay attention. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful about the future in this state. The governor has suggested a number of those. Many of them are in the room right now. One of the greatest vehicles for optimism that I have had at this stage in my life is you and the team that you have built, the work that you have done, the legacy that you leave, and the inspiration that you will always be to people you've never even met. And so from the very depths of my soul, you are without peer. And this council will always be the better for it. And more importantly, the millions of people who have been and will continue to be touched because of your work and your vision for generations to come will always be, whether they know it or not, profoundly in your debt. It's one of the great privileges of my life. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Anyone else before? Folks.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'll just add briefly as well. Director, thank you for your time and your service to the state. You led this body during a period of, feels weird for me to say this, but glory years, if you will. I mean, there was so much from a policy standpoint and a funding standpoint that we had going for us as a state. And you had the great fortune to be able to guide us all during this period where important policy decisions were being made, funding was coming down to help make a difference in communities. And you did such a great job. So we're thankful for your leadership. The memories I'll take with me is I enjoyed these meetings. I learn a lot, especially when the community's present. But the memories I'll take away are I had a chance on 3 occasions to go on tours to see the impact in the community. That's what makes the biggest difference, is for us to be able to be there. We don't always get the chance to be present, but I recall one in particular where we were in LA and we went into this older woman's, sorry to say that out loud, but yeah, we went into this woman's home and we got a chance to see some renovations that were done to make her a home more sort of efficient and green. I mean, those are the kinds of things that leave an impact on you for a long time. And when you get a chance to see firsthand the difference of the policy decisions we're making and the funding that we're putting into people's homes and into their private lives to make a difference. So you led during such a great period. Whoever comes after has got some significant shoes to fill. So thank you. Congratulations on your next endeavors. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Secretary Mashakin.
Chair, one more.
Secretary Moss.
Thank you, Chair. Lynn, I want to just thank you also. I think Frank eloquently described your imprint on this work and on the state. Although we are new to our relationship, with me being on the council, your work, I have known of your work and of you for many years prior to coming into this role. And so you are a fierce champion for the work that you lead, the teams that you build, and your next opportunity will be amazing because you are amazing. And we have a lot of incredible cross-agency work to do together. And you have demonstrated that that is the way in which we need to work, and that business needs to be done differently if we're going to have the kind of impact that Californians expect, because that's actually how people live their lives. And this council, I think, is one of the best examples that we have of that in the state. And so for the work you and your staff have done, I am grateful to work with my colleagues now to see where else we can take the legacy that you've built. So thank you and congratulations.
Thanks, Secretary Moss. Secretary Garcia, then Deputy Secretary Schwartz.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I'll keep it brief, but just want to share, I've had the great privilege and opportunity to work with you in this capacity as well as in your previous capacity. And in my experience, you bring all of the wealth of knowledge and everything that you've seen and learned and the people who you've touched with you into every endeavor that you take on. So I have no doubt that you will do this in your next opportunity. And I'm really excited for you in this opportunity. I think it's super fitting for the work that you've done and the leadership that you've brought to the state. I'm very excited to continue to get to partner with you as we move forward. And just to Secretary Omishakin's point in terms of remembering the great work that we have moving on the ground, I hope that you're able to come back and join us in visits to come, and really looking forward to our ongoing collaborative work together. And thank you for everything you've given to the council.
I also just wanted to add that, when I haven't been here as long, I've been here maybe a year. And what I wanted to speak to is you have such a unique leadership style. You're very kind and gracious, and you really lean in and listen. And I saw, just that attention to detail. I feel like it was just a thread through everything, and I've been so phenomenally impressed by everything the staff has put on, from the Catalyst Conference to, when we have meetings monthly before, these meetings, to really trying to make sure that everything's taken care of, and then all those details, so that you can kind of build something bigger. And I did want to say that I was so delighted to see you last year at the Pride March, and to even come out for that and to be a leader, in that space too. So I really do hope, that our paths cross and that we get to continue working together. But, just on behalf of CNRA, thank you so much for everything that you've done.
Public member Capets.
Great. Well, I had the distinct honor of interviewing Lynn for this job, and I will never forget it because there was a number of candidates, but Lynn stood out so much that I had told everybody in the group, and I don't remember. I think we have such a brand new panel that I don't think anybody else was in the interview process, but I said, she should be Secretary of State. Like, honestly, Lynn, I think like you're bigger even than California. And if you ever run for office, I'll be the first to contribute. I just think I agree with everything that everybody has said. You are just a unique leader. You're somebody who says yes. And I lead an organization where we are told no the majority of the time, that it's not possible. We can't do it. You're trying to shake up the system too much. It's too hard. It costs too much. I mean, that's what me and my team hear nonstop. And any idea that I put forward or thought, you were always like, that's a yes. And then I thought maybe you were just kind of appeasing me, but inevitably you would come back and like have follow through and, even better ideas to move forward with. And so I'm really inspired by you. I can't wait to see what's next. And really, I think the sky's the limit. And just because we need people like you who are trying to change the world, because you're just that extraordinary. So we'll miss you, but fond farewell.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm going to call Jim Soon, an Associate Secretary for the California Health and Human Services, and we'd also like to welcome him joining SGC on behalf of Secretary Gali. Jim.
Thanks, Director Asafa. And Lynn, we have been so grateful for all of the excellent work that you've been doing. The fact that you've been able to find the balance between process and measuring outcomes has been phenomenal. I know that Secretary Gali and his designee, Dr. Rohan Radhakrishna, Linda Helland, and I have always found you to be very responsive to helping address health and equity, racial equity in this work. And we are just thankful for having had the time with you here, knowing that you're making a difference here and will on your next path. So thank you very much.
Deputy Secretary Jameson.
lot of ground has been covered already, but I wanted to add how much I appreciate how calm and cool and collected and thoughtful and creative you are. And it's been such a pleasure to work with you and really feel like you listen to what each of our agency's concerns are and really care about all aspects of the state and how we're managing it. And yeah, just has been a pleasure. And I know we'll all keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Well, after that, Lynn, if you still want to change your mind, I have not yet signed your resignation letter still, so I'm going to give you this chance.
Good afternoon. And first of all, just thank you. I admire each of you so much. I look up to you each so much, and to hear this message, it means so much to me. It is the hardest thing to walk away from something that you care deeply about, but hearing this message from you, it inspires me to keep going and to keep, working in the way that I work and building teams in the way that I have tried to build teams in this space, and just to continue on. I'm going to miss this job immensely, but I really appreciate and am so humbled by the comments that you have all provided today. I am now going to try to give my executive director's report without crying. So thank you and bear with me. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here, for those in person and joining us on Zoom, and council members, again, thank you for all being here today. I would like to start with, we've had this message on my departure, but I'd like to start with also some optimism around new staff. So we have just an incredible new group of individuals who have joined SGC over the last month. So I'd like to start by introducing Hoi Fei Mok. They are the Deputy Director for Equity and Government Transformation. Adrian Moretz, who's the Special Advisor for Innovation and Partnerships, and Chanel Freeman, who's the Associate Planner for Transformative Climate Communities. And each brings an incredible skill set, knowledge base, lived experience to SGC, and I'm so delighted for you all to get to know them and work with them. We also are at that incredibly fun point in the summer where our summer interns have arrived. So we have 3 interns who are placed with SGC, and I believe they are here today. So we have Rohan Shahurdi, Waverly Patterson, and Madison Nguyen. And so we are very excited to have their voices, their new thinking, and excited for all the contributions that they're going to bring this summer to SGC. So I would like to just share a couple program updates. So to start, great news about the Boost Imperial Valley. So this has been an initiative that SGC has been working on with the Governor's Office and the California Energy Commission, where we are working on finding solutions for 7 cities that are located within Imperial County. And the goal here is really to help them access public resources, build community partnerships, and build critical staff capacity to ensure that the implementation of Lithium Valley brings significant community benefits to this region. And we've hit an incredible milestone over the last couple of weeks, where we received the first donation of $500,000 from an anonymous donor who will cover roughly 1/3 of the budget that we'll need to be able to implement a Boost program in the Imperial Valley. So we will be able to start that work in partnership with the Institute for Local Government, and we'll continue to source funding for the rest of the program as we go. The second thing I'd like to share is that we have also had an incredible milestone with the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program. On April 19th, we closed an easement on the largest conservation easement to date. So as you can see by these beautiful pictures, we have just conserved 27,000 acres of land by San Luis Obispo. This property consists of rolling hills, grasslands, oak savanna that stretches from the Los Padres National Forest to the San Juan Valley, and it is utilized predominantly for cattle grazing, dryland farming, and irrigated agriculture. It is also home to endangered plants and animals, and you can see a couple of those on the slides. So just a really critical habitat for threatened and endangered. Finally, I wanted to share also that the Climate Change Research Team has completed its closeout process for the final round, which is round 3 of the program grants. So in July of 2020, the team awarded $4.7 million across 6 research projects. And this was again focusing on advancing tangible outcomes and filling critical research gaps to address the state's climate change goals. Now, of course, with this model, we brought in the important theory around community participation in research, and that has led towards the modeling of the participatory research to policy model. We're just excited to see this model continue to get traction, and I was able to meet with some of the sub-recipients of a new program that we have been funding with the UCs that then supplements existing UC research to continue to bring the community-based research participatory model into academic research. And speaking about my transition, so as Chair Sefa mentioned, this will be my last council meeting, and I am excited to announce that Matt Reed, our staff council, will be the acting executive director while we run the process for finding a new executive director. I just want to thank him for stepping up to this role, sliding one seat to the left, and taking on the duties of this role entails. I am very confident that Matt will be an excellent leader for the organization and will continue to do all of the great work that we have as his team have been able to accomplish over the last couple of years. I also do need to share we have 2 additional departures from SGC. So first, Kim Davia, she joined SGC first as an executive fellow and then joined our health equity program and has made incredible progress, especially with the Racial Equity Resource Hub and a number of our cross-agency working groups. She will be going to Harvard, where she is going to pursue her master's in public policy. So we're so proud of her and excited for her. And also, I need to share that Lois Kim will also be departing SGC as well. So Lois, as everybody knows, has just been an instrumental part of SGC, has been really the touch point for so many as we've been working together across all of these different initiatives, projects, and programs. And she will be sorely missed. However, we are so excited because she is also going to go and develop affordable housing. So if you were going to leave SGC, if you're building housing, that's a great place to go. So congratulations to Lois and Kim. We're just so excited for you. Thank you for everything that you've both done for the organization. And we'll be watching because we know you're going to do great stuff. And if I may just take a couple moments, I just wanted to first of all, first start by thanking the governor for trusting me within this position. It has been incredible to serve within this administration and to have straight from the top a governor who prioritizes climate, prioritizes equity, and really does push us forward in thinking about how we can be really innovative in what we're doing here in the state. I think as we heard from yesterday with the state of the state, you know, it is so important that we do this work well. Eyes are on us as a state. And I think having that leadership from very top has been so important to this work. And I've been honored to be part of the administration. I also wanted to thank this council. You know, I have so many poignant memories in my head of the direction that you gave to us around, you know, really tackling the toughest issues, leaning in, staying strong, thinking creatively, thinking expansively, thinking not just about solving a problem, but fixing a system. And I hope that as we've been doing this work together over the last couple of years, that you have seen your direction coming clearly through our work, because I think that the council has come together in an incredible way with providing us and myself as the executive director and the whole team with the mandate, the coverage, the encouragement, the ideas, the inspiration, and the experience to feel pretty confident about taking things into a new direction. And so I'm just forever grateful that this council trusted me with this job and also continue to support, encourage, and push us forward and really thinking about what strategic growth can look like for the state. So thank you. I also wanted to thank the staff. This is an incredible team, very mission driven, very passionate, always bringing their authentic selves to the work that they do. And I think that might be their superpower. You know, it's when you're really bringing your ideas, your experience, your vision forward in the work that you do, you get to solutions in a different way. And I'm so grateful that the team does that and continues to work together to really take on really tough, challenging, but really inspirational work. And I thank them. And I think one of the things that has been so fun about SGC is that it is truly a collaboration. We sit in the council and we come up with incredible ideas and solutions. We work directly with partners. We work with grant implementation partners. We speak very candidly with advocacy groups. We work with the legislature. We listen very directly to residents of affordable housing properties and others who are impacted and benefit from the programming. And we really pull all of that together to be able to come up with holistic solutions. And we know that all of us are just a piece of that puzzle, and that it's really important that we're kind of continuing to coordinate and work collaboratively across spaces. And we just couldn't do this without the community-based organizations, the tribal leaders, the local government leaders, the thought partners, the technical assistance providers, the evaluators, everybody who comes together to be part of the work that we do. So I really do think the whole partnership that comes together around this council. Now, as Director Acefa mentioned, when I started this job 3 years ago, I had a couple goals. I said, first, I wanted to set a strategic direction for the council in partnership with the governor's office and the council members. Really think about clear and defined focus for council activities. Second, I wanted to elevate and streamline the role that SGC plays in interagency coordination. Third, I wanted to communicate the refined focus and strategic agenda for SGC and the council work. Finally, I wanted to achieve budget sustainability for core SGC team and SGC work. And I think as we move into the next discussion item, I hope that you see that we have met a lot of these goals and maybe even gone above and beyond. I hope that you see that in this work, how the council direction, the trust, the strategy, and the expertise shows up in the plans that the team is going to present to you next. And I'm so confident and proud of the collective group's efforts. Because I truly do think that this collaboration is what drives the innovation. So just wrapping it up, I am extremely excited for what's next for this team. I'm optimistic for the future. And I thank you with all of my heart for all of the time that we've spent together. And I just look forward to continuing to work with you, just wearing a different hat. So thank you so much. And following Matt's reminder on public comment, I'd like to turn it back over to Chair Acefa. Thank you.
For anyone wishing to provide public comment on this item, please either fill out a comment card at the table near the back of the room or online at sgc.ca.gov/meetings.
Thanks, Matt. I'll open it up to council discussion. Item, any? Matt, do we have any public comments?
We have no public comment on this item.
Great. So moving on, we are now on item 5, which is the consent calendar. The consent calendar is for routine and non-controversial business. I'll ask Lynn once again to provide a brief overview of the consent calendar.
Thank you, Chair Acefa. So the consent calendar is asking for technical amendments to the factory-built housing pre-development pilot program guidelines. This is, of course, a program that we have designed to bring partners through our process to then access the Department of Energy Loan Program Office Title 17 program. And so the updates that we're proposing just continue to align with some of the requirements in the DOE's process that have adjusted since we started this guideline agreement. The proposed amendments do not change the timeline, the content, or the policy. It just really does realign us with the DOE. And while we have you here on this topic, just to share that the notice of funding and application is planned to be released on July 1. And after the revised guidelines are approved by the council, then we would be putting applications out due in October and expect the first round of awards in December. So that I would turn it back over to Matt for a reminder on public comment, and then return it back to Chair Acefa. Thank you.
For anyone wishing to provide public comment on this item, please either fill out a comment card at the table near the back of the room or online at sgc.ca.gov/meetings.
Do you have any public comments?
And we have no public comment on this item.
Any questions from council on the consent? None. Now we'll move on to the next item. Do we need to vote on this? We do. Roll call. Oh, man, can I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve.
President Garcia made a motion. Second. Secretary Omashakin,
Second.
Secretary Garcia,
Yes.
Secretary Moss,
Yes.
Secretary Omashakin,
Yes.
Director Acefa,
yes.
Public Member Cardenas,
Yes.
Deputy Secretary Schwartz,
Yes.
Associate Secretary Sunan, Chancellor Munoz, Deputy Secretary Jameson,
Yes.
joining virtually Public Member Capretz.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Moving on to item 6, which is a discussion item on the Council Priority 3, Housing, Climate, and Equity. And I would like to again introduce Lynn, Sean Kennedy, who's Deputy Director of Energy Investments, and Alex Walker, Executive Fellow, to present the item. And then we'll have council discussion followed by public comments. Sean?
Great. And good afternoon, Chair and Council members. First, I'd like to thank the three Council Priority 3 champions, BCSH, OPR, and EPA, for their continued support of this work, and really, as I think you'll see today, the progress that we've made over the last year. So as a quick recap, in December 2022, the Council established its third Council Priority. Priority 3 aims to elevate and accelerate progress towards the state's housing, climate, and equity goals through improved coordination across state agencies and greater alignment between local, regional, and state government entities and their efforts. Priority 3 is centered on the concept of strategic growth, the core mandate of this council, defined as an inclusive, coordinated, and interagency approach to development and conservation that helps protect our health and natural environment and make our communities more resilient, culturally and economically vibrant, and socially diverse. Next slide, please. So in April 2023, staff presented the Priority 3 work plan to Council, and today we're pleased to provide an annual progress report on that work. I'll now turn to my colleague, Alex Walker, SGC Executive Fellow, for an overview of the progress report. Alex.
Thank you, Sean, and good evening, Council. I'm pretty tall. I'm going to grab the mic. It's good to be here today. As Sean said, my name is Alex Walker. I'm an Executive Fellow for the Strategic Growth Council. I'm excited to share some updates regarding the Year 1 progress report. First, I just wanted to share that we're pleased to provide this announcement. To support Priority 3, we've developed a 2-year work plan, and it's designed to operationalize the goals that the council has set out and staff has recommended. And moving forward, this plan is comprised of short and medium-term goals. And from there are 3 goals that are going to be outlined in the next slide. As we move forward in the presentation, we can see that each goal is supported by 2 to 3 strategies, which include actions for implementation, an associated timeline, as well as affiliated work groups. And the actions implemented by SGC member agencies, I just wanted to thank the HTC+C subcommittee, as well as the Housing and Transportation Work Group for their work in supporting this work plan. Moving forward on to the next slide. We have a variety of interagency feedback, 70+ comments, and over 100 edits across 8 agencies. Again, thanking the HTC+C subcommittee for their work and the Housing and Transportation Work Group. Just really wanted to express that because this was really a collaborative effort. The things that we're presenting to you today for your consideration have been thought through and really aligned with Council Priority number 2. Moving forward, I want to share some key highlights. I'm very proud to announce that 19 of the 27 actions are complete or in progress. In regards to item A1, it reflects our efforts in regards to tribal efforts, legislation related to Priority 3. The inventory consists of 49 initiatives organized by sector and initiative type. In addition, there are 4 areas of focus. The first, opportunities for greater alignment across existing efforts. The second, local government capacity and ability to implement state policy. The third, current level of coordination on data, as well as legislation and regulation. And then the fourth, how our tribal efforts are being factored into our considerations. Moving forward to item A14, we established a variety of different education series and topics. We've had a variety of different experts come speak to us both in person and virtually with topics including housing, regional coordination, as well as regenerative design. In regards to item A7, sleep meetings serve as a statewide communication and ideation hub to help the state and local amenities identify priorities and really cooperate together in solution making space. In addition, we've hosted 3 additional virtual meetings with Sleek, and these are further outlined in the report itself. In regards to item A23, the tribal capacity building pilot program, we are very grateful that we're able to award $1.45 million to the first 6 recipients of both federally and non-federally recognized tribes, really affirming SGC space and providing for tribal needs and their capacity needs as well. I will now pass the floor back to Deputy Director Kennedy to share a review of the 24-25 proposed areas of focus.
Great, thank you, Alex. I forgot to mention earlier, of the council champions, we have OPR, BCSH, EPA, and of course, Public Member Capretz. So thank you, Public Member Capretz. So on to the year ahead. So in addition to tracking progress, the feedback received through the review process helped identify potential areas of focus for the coming year. The staff report, which is included in your binder, includes 6 proposed areas of focus, which I'll walk through now. And then during the discussion period that will follow this presentation, we invite your guidance on prioritizing these proposed areas and the support required for implementation. So the first one here, something that we've all been talking about a lot, is pathways to federal funding. So the proposal outlined, again, in the staff report and also in the progress report, is that SGC and its interagency partners can develop a project inventory of unfunded projects that support housing, climate, and equity goals, and then identify opportunities to match those projects to available funding, looking at the National Clean Investment Fund, also known as the National Green Bank, Solar for All, which SGC will be supporting the implementation of, and the Build America Bureau financing, and also SGC's Connecting Communities initiatives, which we'll be hearing about later today. The second area concerns administrative and implementation actions. So as we all know, slow and burdensome administrative processes add to housing development costs, which presents additional barriers to infill development. SGC and its member agencies can explore and report on administrative and implementation actions that can be adjusted to lower the cost per unit of housing in infill areas. Third item concerns excess sites and surplus lands. So the Interagency Housing, Transportation, Climate and Conservation Subcommittee that Alex mentioned earlier could support HCD's work on state excess sites and local surplus lands by sharing data and knowledge with partners across agencies and supporting the expansion of interagency technical assistance for state excess sites, surplus land act programs, and housing that reduces vehicle miles traveled. Where housing is not deemed suitable on these sites, the HTC+C subcommittee could explore pathways to meet Council Priority 3 goals related to conservation and agriculture. Next slide, please. The fourth area is continuing coordination on RENA and sustainable community strategies alignment. And here, again, the HTC+C subcommittee could leverage the state, local energy, climate coordination meetings, SLEEK, as Alex just mentioned, which Sam was there for yesterday, met in Palm Springs, and also the Housing, Climate and Equity Education Series to share opportunities for stakeholder input and comment and provide thought partnership and collaboration on policy and programmatic feedback. SGC could also leverage California's Housing Future 2040 report to evaluate how new housing development and transportation projects advance state equity and sustainability goals. The fifth area, agriculture, conservation, and farm worker housing. And remember, the focus of Priority 3 is not solely on accelerating infill development, but as we mentioned previously, taking a regional perspective and also looking at efforts to curb sprawl through protecting agriculture and conservation. So to this end, HTC+C could work with SGC's Sustainable Agricultural Land Conservation Program to assess funded planting projects and identify examples that integrate development and conservation in ways that advance the objectives of Council Priority 3, such as, for example, co-locating climate-ready farm worker housing on agricultural land. Finally, additional tools and strategies. HTC+C and SGC can develop a summary of potential high-impact tools and strategies not yet part of the state's interagency efforts that could accelerate progress towards state housing, climate, and equity goals. This summary could include an analysis of resources, capacity, funding, and data that would be needed to pursue these additional measures. So moving on to the discussion. Next slide, please. So with these proposed areas of mind, and again, they are listed in the staff report for your reference, we ask that the council consider the 3 following questions. What are your agency's most significant Priority 3 accomplishments over the past 12 months? Which of the proposed areas of focus within the progress report should SGC and SGC member agencies prioritize in the upcoming year? And finally, what information, actions, or other forms of support are required to ensure the effective implementation of these priority areas? And once again, I'd like to thank the Council and the Priority 3 champions for their ongoing commitment to this work, and I look forward to the discussion in the year ahead. I'll now pass it back to Matt.
For anyone wishing to submit a public comment on this item, I would encourage you to submit the form at the back of the room or submit an online form at sgc.ca.gov/meetings. Thank you.
Sorry. Now I'll open it up to council discussion, and I want to prioritize Priority 3 champions in our conversation. So I'm going to start with Secretary Garcia, followed by Secretary Moss, Public Member Capretz, and then I would go, then open it up to council members. So Secretary.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the staff for really shepherding a lot of this through over the past year. It's good to hear about the progress we've made in this realm. Certainly a need for us across the state, I think, undeniably. So excited to hear about the progress and also think about some of the areas of opportunity for prioritization in the upcoming year. I think I'll start just with a little bit of the flavor of Cal EPA's participation in some of the accomplishments over the past year. But mostly, much of the work that we're doing in this space has been housed within the Air Resources Board and has been largely focused on leveraging the great historical work that we've done and work moving forward on VMT reduction, vehicle miles traveled reduction, supporting infill housing development and climate-friendly housing development. We have looked to enhance our partnership through this effort with several of the departments, or at least HCD within Secretary Moss's agency, and really working with that team quite closely with OPR as well as the council staff. Integrating principles from HCD's pro-housing designation program into our California Climate Investments Program, which is great. I think a real step of progress in the right direction. Our Climate Investments Program annually releases guidelines that kind of underlie the funding that we are moving forward out of our cap and trade program. And these go to a great deal of different types of projects all across the state, but I think very important to draw the connection between housing as a climate strategy in this area of work. So I'm really proud of that. We've also executed several research projects over the past year or so, including research into the potential for climate and housing production benefits of adaptive reuse and factory-built housing, which aligns very well with the strategy and line of work across the staff that Lynn was just talking about. We've also looked into executing some research contracts and have done so on potential ways to coordinate across policy goals, including housing production, VMT reduction, and affirmatively furthering fair housing. Nobody needs any of us to tell anyone that there's an ongoing housing crisis in the state, and access to that housing is critically important. So really looking at that from the climate standpoint across the Air Resources Board's work has been great. And then just big picture, I think really integrating the actions identified in the 2022 scoping plan, which is our most recent scoping plan to reach carbon neutrality by 2045 and achieve an over 70% improvement in our quality with our housing goals, has been critically important as well. So that's something that we're really proud of and look forward to continuing to support. I will note, I think the two other boards and departments within Cal EPA, who I look forward to integrating into this line of work a little bit more, are the State Water Resources Control Board in terms of looking at water supply. And I think some of the focus priority areas that we'll talk about for the year ahead, provide an opportunity for this, but also the Department of Toxic Substances Control, which has been doing some really great cleanup work, including in places like the Fruitvale in Oakland, to support affordable housing production in partnership with Native American community health partnerships, et cetera. And so I think a lot of leveraging of co-benefits in that line of work as well, and want to continue to see that moving forward and building areas for healthy homes. In terms of the prioritization for the upcoming year and what we'd like to see moving forward, I really appreciate the focus in the document on infill and climate-friendly development, and think that we need to carry that through. And of course, I think Secretary Moss would agree with this, that we need to continue our coordination on the RENA in particular, and ensure that our principles of alignment are reflected there, and also align with the sustainable community strategies, and ensure that those are speaking to one another, ensure the greatest level of consistency we can with those, as well as our regional plans. Second, I think there's also a significant opportunity on the agricultural conservation and farm worker housing line of work. I'm really looking forward to us continuing to flesh this one out as well, drawing the connection between housing and conservation, and exploring how to bridge AHSC and SALC more directly. I think we have a pretty ripe opportunity ahead of us, since we're working on the next round of guidelines for SALC. So look forward to continuing to engage in those conversations. And I understand we'll probably have some working discussions in the summer. And so looking forward to doing that with my colleagues here on the council. And then finally, I think just thinking about our additional tools and strategies that we can continue to deploy in advancing progress toward our shared goals. I think we've explored some of them, but making sure that we're really drilling down and getting to all of them would be really great. And being able to report that to the council would be wonderful in the time to come. And I think I'll stop there for now and kick it over to my co-leaders in this effort, and really appreciate the leadership of both Secretary Moss and Council Member Capretz in this work at a statewide level, and also at the regional and local level.
Can I just say ditto, or do I? Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Secretary Garcia. There was so much in your comments that resonate with me and BCSH. Before I sort of answer the question specifically, one of the things that I think is special about this council, and I said it in my remarks to Lynn, is that we are trying to integrate work across both policy areas, agencies, departments, and people. And it is not lost on me how much work has gone into this from the staff level, from all of my colleagues on the council. And what I'm really excited about is, how do we then translate both our intent with all of the action areas, and kudos for all the progress we've made. But I am curious how we translate that impact to people in community. And what does it really mean when we say that we have, sort of integrated strategies across climate, housing, equity? Like, how does that show up in community? Because if we can make the translation to our collective efforts and really cement that into how we're designed and working, like that we come together collaboratively, because that's actually how people live. And we want to be able to, when folks are applying for our programs, when folks are trying to access opportunities that have to do with our state resources, that they do that in a way that is easy, that's accessible, and that's understandable about how is it actually improving the quality of their lives. So I think it is the spirit of this council priority area that I think could really be transformative for the work that we do. So it's not just how are we doing on our tracker, but like we are then translating those wins into the improvement in the lives of people in California. So I think that's a really important piece for me. And I get a little bit lost sometimes in the word soup. There's so much of it. It's the energy and the acronym, and like there's so much and it means something to us, but I don't always think it translates to people being like, how do I actually buy the land that I need to get to build the affordable housing? Or how do I actually reduce my footprint in my community on greenhouse gas emissions? So I think just figuring out how we do that better could be really powerful in making the work that's already underway more impactful. The other piece I was going to highlight is similar to what Secretary Garcia was saying. There are areas in this plan that are already sort of looking at some of the priorities we think about. The farm worker housing piece, Secretary Ross and I had a chance to do a tour. I know Secretary Omashakin is talking about when you actually get in community and see how these things are working, it really resonates. And there's a lot of intricacy around the housing needs for farm workers, and how are we treating the employees versus migrant families, and how do we kind of look at that in a more comprehensive sort of way. So that is here, and I think that should be prioritized. That's something that sort of crosses a lot of our agencies and departments. So I'm really excited to look forward to that. And then the other place that we have been really exploring, particularly with the passage of Prop 1, are the health connections to health, housing, climate, transportation. They're all the same to me, actually, right? Because again, I think this is how people live, but where are the opportunities that we can leverage federal resources, leverage our state resources, where we can make housing, frankly, an all state responsibility. Someone was talking to me recently about the affordability crisis of California being sort of an existential threat to the vitality of our state. And I think at the core of that is our housing affordability. But it also means if we don't have a planet and a community that has healthy air and access to water, we don't have transportation that allows people to get around. So I do think there's something about how do we leverage opportunities at the federal level that are looking cross policy areas, and then where we have seen state investments in our various departments and agencies. I think SGC is the place to really unpack opportunities there. So I'd love to see that prioritized. And then the adaptation plan and nature-based solutions, I think it's been really great coordination between CNRA and OPR to make sure that housing and homelessness are included in that foundational climate document. So thank you for that. And I'd love to again, continue to see that prioritized. I have so many other notes, but I'm tired of hearing myself talk. So perhaps I'll pause there and maybe come back on the mic with something poignant. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Secretary Moss. Public Member Carpretz.
Well, Secretary Garcia and Secretary Moss are speaking my language. Loving it, and I'm looking forward to next year. As some may recall, I have been echoing the idea that it would be wonderful for the state to continue to try to translate a lot of the state language and academic speak, as I call it, into in a message that actually resonates with people on the ground. That, as somebody who works in the community and has worked in the community for 30 years, I definitely think there's a lot of growth that's possible there. So we are bringing more people to the table, and so they feel like this fight is their fight, because it is, obviously. I think in general, Sean, thank you so much. And sorry, I don't know the new staffer yet. Sorry, I don't know your name yet. But I think the accomplishments are wonderful. I think the state has done a great job. So speaking again from kind of my perspective from the community, I think the idea of infill and having climate-friendly housing is gaining a lot of traction. Again, people don't necessarily use those terms, but I feel like that is, people understand that more and more. Obviously, we have the complication of the insurance market going, haywire, and fires and extreme heat, just, drawing attention to where we place housing and what that really means to everyday lives. So I think that is also just making all of this work come together. And again, so we bring more voices that we need to this conversation. As far as where I think we should go in the coming year, I love the idea, and I feel like both secretaries highlighted this, of finding pathways to federal funding. Because I think that green bank that you mentioned, Sean, like I don't know exactly what that means. So if I don't know what it means, by the way, that means the community definitely doesn't know what it means. But we need new tools, and we need to think bigger and broader, and we have to get scale somehow. So I think if that is as cool as it sounds, then that could be a way to continue to magnify the amount of money and attention we're giving, as Secretary Moss said, to housing, which is probably the single most important issue that the state is facing. I also love the last one about additional tools. For me, it's about, I would love to explore more about what's possible with social housing. Again, just thinking outside the box, thinking differently. The existing tools that we have are not enough. I know the state's doing a great job using all the tools at your disposal. I think at the end of the day, though, we're not even close to hitting RHNA goals. I don't think anywhere. I don't know. Maybe some cities are, but certainly in Southern California, not even close. And frankly, we don't have the tools to even get to the scale we need. So we got to think differently. And so the idea that that could be a priority for next year, to me, just to begin that conversation, is really important. And I'm hoping to continue to push that. Lastly, I will say that, the oil and gas industry is not going away without a fight. And they, have stalled progress on making sure that homes are all electric and that we're removing dangerous methane gas from homes. But there's so much new gas infrastructure going in. It's a very depressing, frankly, and concerning for health, for safety, for climate, for all of it. So anything we can do to continue to find also new ways to make climate-friendly housing, I guess that falls under that umbrella, actually have a better shot. That would be, I think, also super important, because while we're building all this new housing and it's totally needed, there's most of it is not electric. And so that continues to be a problem. And of course, as everybody knows, the other issue is transportation. Again, in our organization, we just look at the data. The data does not show VMT going down. We don't see a trend line going in the right direction. We continue to see highways being expanded, lanes being added. The idea that congestion is going to go down if we add a lane, which is like, if you ask any expert, nobody agrees. That's just fallacy. That is no longer true. And yet we hear state officials say it over and over again. Very frustrating for, again, advocates on the ground. So again, that speaks to the idea of additional tools. Like, what is it going to take to create that kind of synergy between a lot of what us in the communities are trying to pursue in terms of bikeable, walkable, transit-friendly neighborhoods, which again has so many benefits: health, equity, community, just, I don't know, there's some climate, it just hits all those right notes. So still looking for tools there. So anyhow, thank you to staff. Thank you to my fellow champions on this issue. And I look forward to next year.
Thanks, Nicole. I think your fellow champion, Secretary Moss, may have some additional comments. And hearing about transportation, I have to ask Secretary Omashakin if he has anything to add. Secretary Moss.
Thank you, Chair. And Councilmember Capretz, you just reminded me about the importance of equity in all of this. I mean, we talk about it. The governor issued our executive order on equity. And I think we need to reaffirm what that really looks like in communities, and frankly, be explicit about our strategies that actually target disrupting the disparities that persist for particular communities around both climate impacts as well as housing and homelessness. Our African-American brothers and sisters, as well as our indigenous folks, are disproportionately impacted by these challenges. And I think we have to have explicit strategies that help understand if we in fact are moving the needle with respect to reducing those disparities. I know that there is a working group that's going to be coming back to us, I think, in the fall here. Am I right about that, Lynn? So I'm really excited to hear about what they are coming up with and how we might socialize some of those ideas across the various other tables that are committed to addressing our equity goals. So just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Moss, Secretary Machete. Oh, Secretary Garcia.
One quick thing before we move to transportation. I 100% want to just uplift both of the things that were just said, particularly the focus on equity, and in the spirit of thinking about the climate friendly sort of development, which is really also just healthy development in terms of reducing exposure to emissions from gas stoves, even inside the home, et cetera. I think we also need to consider, to Secretary Moss's point, the impact of a focus on utility bills and affordability writ large. You know, because of the governor's leadership, we just finished off an $880 million debt relief, COVID debt relief for water arrearages for water ratepayers who had gone into deficit over the COVID-19 pandemic. It's things like this that may not necessarily be housing related, but are certainly related to the impact of climate change, a health pandemic, and just the need to provide that sort of baseline relief for low-income Californians to ensure that they are actually able to keep a roof over their head, and that they're not forced to make decisions that may otherwise jeopardize their ability to have a healthy home. So just a ditto to what's been said, and hopefully we can continue to focus on that. And in my experience, Secretary Omishakin is very much a champion for VMT reduction and infill development. I will kick it over to him, although he is not a part formally of our committee. He is definitely a champion for this work too. So over to you, Secretary.
An adopted member of your committee, if you guys will adopt me. If I could, let me start with Councilmember Carpets. She still has her hands up. I don't know if she wanted to make another comment, or I could go, if you don't mind. I'll just keep going. Okay. Oh, she has one more comment.
No,
Mr.
please
Chair.
go forward. Go forward. I'll go
Okay.
after you. I just have one quick thing to add. That's all.
Okay, so I'll start just briefly with the comments you made, especially on the transportation side, and the challenge that you've deemed that we have related to highways still being expanded and our lack of focus on a multimodal transportation system. I'll say that during my tenure, both at Caltrans and now at the Transportation Agency, this has been a core part of our mission. CAPTI, which I think most folks here probably know about, has been our guiding document around this particular issue. And I've worked with our team to establish what we call the core four priorities for transportation. And that's safety, equity, climate action, and economic prosperity. Now, you can put all the policy documents and all the fancy language you want together. The proof's always in the pudding, like what's happening with funding, especially. And if you look at our funding over the last 5 years in the Newsom administration as it relates to transportation investments, increasingly more and more, it's going to non-highway investments. That is not our focus at all. We're not focused on expanding highways. The challenge, however, is not all local governments are necessarily there. And the pipeline for projects is a lengthy pipeline. Some projects, especially large ones, take, in some cases, 15 years from inception to completion. So some projects may be 2 or 3 years towards completion, and you're seeing the outcome of that. You're seeing the back end of those widening projects possibly happening. But as far as our focus and priority moving forward during this administration, completely the opposite of expanding highways. That is not a focus for us, not a priority whatsoever. Again, some projects may be headed down the pipeline that are still moving forward. The decarbonizing, as Secretary Garcia mentioned, reducing VMT as much as possible has become our sort of the center of our focus daily. So just wanted to clear that. It's probably the case, as the council member mentioned, in some cases that's still happening, probably more at a local level, probably projects that are already in the pipeline, but that is no longer something that I can assure you is a focus of ours at the state level. To item number 6, I want to continue just a little bit from where Secretary Moss left off in talking about how important equity is in this. 3 things I'll just briefly mention related to equity in this item, the 3 components of this item. Number 1, kudos to the team, the SGC team and all the teams that worked on this, including some CalSTA folks, including Darwin. I don't see him here, but we developed an anti-displacement memo. I think that was shared at some point through one of our meetings here, but that anti-displacement memo is so important because whenever we do projects on the transportation side, very often people sometimes get displaced. One of the biggest challenges we have in our industry, in our work, is gentrification. It's something that there's no silver bullet for. There's no perfect solution for stopping gentrification, but stopping displacements when we make public investments and stopping or curbing as much as possible gentrification is something that we all have to continue to pay attention to in a state, as you all mentioned, that has increasingly become challenging to afford to live in for some. So it's an important memo. So kudos to the SGC team and our teams for all the work that they did in finalizing and putting this memo out. So it is now public. If you haven't seen it, just look up anti-displacement memo from SGC. Number 2, we finally rolled out a Highways to Boulevard program that Governor Newsom put $150 million towards 2 years ago or 3 years ago in the state budget. The Highways to Boulevard program, if you're not familiar with it, you are familiar with the need for it. If you're not familiar with the program, the need for it stems from the fact that for 50 to 60 years, we built so much transportation infrastructure in America, and in particular in this state as well, where we gutted and divided communities that are largely underserved. And the impact from a social standpoint, from a health standpoint, from an economic standpoint, connectivity, on and on and on, in many cases was detrimental. Kudos to, again, our teams for coming up with a program to reconnect the fabrics of those communities that were impacted by those highway developments with this Highways to Boulevard program. And finally, Caltrans, a lot of kudos to the team there, the director and the team. They came up with a transportation equity index tool called the EQI to help them make better equity-related investment decisions within the department. So something else to look up when you get a chance if you're not familiar with it, the EQI, the Transportation Equity Index tool. Finally, as far as things to look forward to, I think both secretaries who spoke before me mentioned this, and that remains the fact that I mentioned this about the director. We're sort of in a glory period as it relates to funding. Still unprecedented amount of funding state, despite the fiscal constraints we have. Unprecedented amount state funding and definitely federal funding. So everything from transportation funding, HUD, EPA at the federal level, there's a ton of money. The role that SGC can play moving forward, at least potentially, we don't know what's going to happen in November. It'll be fun to see. But as these existing programs, federal funding continue, how can SGC continue to help align us state agencies to help local agencies become more competitive for this federal money that's coming out? Sometimes we do this work, this funding work in our silos of excellence or cylinders of excellence, however you want to look at it. But how do we cross collaborate and making sure that federal funds get to the communities that really need it and deserve it the most? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Secretary Omashak. And Nicole, you have additional comments?
Oh, I just wanted to piggyback real quick on Secretary Garcia's comment about affordability and especially in rates, utility rates. Is there any way, Sean, that we could have CEC or CPUC join this committee? I know they're not officially part. It feels like a huge gap at SGC. It's like the one player stakeholder that's not at the SGC table, but they're instrumental to affordability.
Nothing preventing CEC from being involved. I will say with the new energy investments portfolio that I'm overseeing, that energy burden is a key focus of that work under the broader banner of energy justice and coordinating with CEC. They have a team that works specifically on energy equity work. They've developed an index of energy equity indicators as well, which ties again back to this concept of energy burden. And I think integrating some of that work into this Council Priority 3 is certainly a pathway forward there.
Okay. I think, and well, just, of course, the PUC is the one that's actually, you know, regulating and making decisions that are affecting every single, you know, household in California. So they also, in my opinion, would be very important. But anyhow, thank you so much. I just wanted to add that I thought they could be a good addition to this team.
Great. So as the last member of the champions, I'll just sort of touch on a few issues. I think I'll start with what Secretary Moss brought up. I think Secretary Garcia as well, in terms of how does this translate to community or benefits versus sort of checking the box on results. I think one of the critical parts of that is just showing results on the ground, you know, getting things done faster, getting opportunities for housing, whether it's land or resources, faster, because the demands are so high. Just getting things on the ground is important. And to that end, I think some of the discussions are important. What are the tools that will help us get there? And relevant to question one, agency's significant accomplishments. I think OPR just recently completed a site check, a mapping tool that makes it easier for developers to site projects for residential projects. It's really a transformative tool in terms of making that process much easier. We'll be launching it soon, but it is, you know, one area where tools are important. This is a CEQA mapping tool. It makes it so much easier to really locate and find sites for development. The other relevant to the questions, I think funding is critical, and which are the proposed areas of focus SGC should prioritize. I think pathways to federal funding is critical, and we need to figure out how to double down on that because funding is one of the critical sources. I also want to address another issue Secretary Omashakin raised. Gentrification is always an issue, not just in California, everywhere. Whenever you have site improvements, transportation with all its good intentions creates great transportation infrastructure. What happens? Property values go up. If the people impacted by that don't have land ownership, well, they are displaced because we are in a free market. We don't have a command economy here. So the question of how do we think about, you know, additional ideas of maximizing opportunities for land ownership. Caltrans owns a lot of public land. You know, are there opportunities for transfer of those lands or you know, getting ahead of one of the most effective tools from my experience, especially in areas like Seattle, is before you do the infrastructure improvements, you do analysis of what the gentrification risks are, and then figure out how you then empower those communities that would be impacted by trying to get access to land. Land ownership is the most critical issue in addressing equity. So that's one area. Another is some discussions we're having with the conservation agency around transfer of development rights. How do you transfer development rights in agricultural land areas to preserve agricultural land, but also create opportunities in where development should occur. So we need to look at those kinds of tools, and we're working with the natural resources as well as the conservation to look at, how do we link our objectives to protect working lands, especially ag land, while also releasing the pressure on site development and housing. So those are some of the areas. Obviously, the tools are important. We're also working, OPR is working on strategies in collaboration with GoBiz and Energy Commission. We've submitted an application to the Department of Energy to then upgrade a tool called Cameo Camp. This is a mapping tool that OPR uses to cite energy projects, renewable energy projects. How do we link the need for renewable energy with the need to maximize electrified housing and housing that really responds to the environment? So we need to think about those kinds of connections. There's more here, but I think some of those sort of come up as important areas that we should explore. Priority 3. With that, I'll give my other members a chance to speak. I see Deputy Secretary Jemison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Real quick, before I forget about it, I want to address the first question about our most significant priority 3 accomplishments over the last 12 months. So CDFA is in the process of finalizing our department's strategic plan, which is embedding equity across all of its goals. And that plan is also building on our racial equity action plan, which we published in the fall of 2023. We are also beginning the development of a climate resilience strategy for California agriculture. We're just in the early drafting stages of it. We're hoping to have a draft in late summer, and we'll be holding public meetings, possibly through our Environmental Farming Act Science Advisory Panel. So stay tuned. And hopefully it's going to address a lot of these issues we've been talking about here today. So when we were looking at the proposed areas of focus within the progress report, of course, farm worker housing really jumped out at us as a key issue that we've been discussing a lot recently. We appreciate the suggestion in the progress report to do a farm worker housing inventory, also looking at its spatial relationship to agricultural land, and ensuring that we have sufficient housing stock. We wanted to note that there's some key research being conducted this year that might inform a statewide farm worker housing strategy through the Western Center for Ag Health and Safety. And then on the agricultural and conservation topic more broadly, we're seeing a couple things that we think is really important to think about. And so, we have one of the most productive agricultural areas in the whole entire world. We have a very unique combination of really high quality soils and Mediterranean climate that lets us grow things here that we can grow almost nowhere else, and in many cases, absolutely nowhere else. And so while we're thinking about strategic growth, we want to make sure that we're thinking about warehousing. There's so much warehouse development happening, which of course is accommodating the increase in online shopping and ordering for delivery and consumer convenience. But one of the things besides, just citing that stuff on prime farmland, which we don't think is a great use of prime farmland, is that online shopping and warehouses are potential pathways for pest pathogens. They facilitate the movement of plant materials, and if those are coming out from outside of the state and we don't necessarily get a chance to inspect, and they may not be following protocols, we may see the introduction of invasive species coming into California, and that infects, potentially agricultural areas, but also natural lands. So it's a really big concern. The second one is the confluence of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which is going to cause some farmlands to go out of production. And you mentioned the state's need to develop renewable energy sources like solar. And so right now it feels like these things are happening really rapidly, perhaps with regard to planning, but it's hard to tell sometimes. And we think that they need to happen really carefully and thoughtfully, keeping in mind our rarer farmlands, that these things are affecting the Central Valley in particular. And we want to make sure that we're doing a thoughtful process that doesn't displace jobs without creating new workforce development opportunities in what is an already economically underserved area. We were thinking we could also do some targeted outreach for SALC planning grants. The SALC program has funding that could be used to affect these land use issues through perhaps the HTC+C interagency group. And we can also talk about how we can use those planning grants and sustainable community strategies in combination to address those rapidly evolving issues. So just on the third question here about additional actions, we think it's important to stay connected to the California Jobs First process. So we keep workforce in mind as we make land use decisions, because those have a direct effect on the jobs of the future. We really want to raise up the opportunity for building a workforce around climate resilience on natural and working lands. We have such a great need for climate smart ag technical assistance, and I'm pretty sure that applies to forestry and restoration and all of the other natural and working lands areas. And we wanted to lift up the work that's happening at the Department of Conservation with their new multi-benefit land use mapping tool. And right now we're seeing how it can be applied to the San Joaquin Valley Water Collaborative Action Program process, and hopefully set a model for how to take into account how to best use our natural resources. And then finally, we're really excited about OPR's general plan process update. And we think it'll be really helpful to have discussions around land use in that forum, especially thinking about, again, like SGMA implementation, working with DWR so we can understand where lands will really be fallowed and how we can direct other land uses to places where it makes most sense. So I'll stop there.
Deputy Secretary Schwartz.
So I'm really grateful to staff, and I'm actually incredibly grateful for this conversation and just the fact that we're kind of really thinking about this in a very holistic way. I don't want to take up too much time because I know we have additional discussion topics, but I did want to, just lift up and agree with my colleagues on the communication piece, the pathways to federal funding, and also the critical equity piece. To me, that's, that should be kind of at the core of everything. As we all know, underserved communities are the most vulnerable to climate change and have the fewest resources to adapt or move. And to just touch on, I'll just keep it kind of high level, but to touch on a few things that we have done at the Natural Resources Agency in the past year. As part of the 5th California Climate Change Assessment, CNRA is funding 15 research projects to fill critical gaps related to understanding and adapting to climate impacts in California. We're also funding 2 with direct housing nexus. And we're also in the midst of updating, as was mentioned, the California Climate Adaptation Strategy, which is open for public comment now. And BCSH and HCD have been great partners on this. And there are several actions and success metrics at the nexus of climate and housing. CAL FIRE, Urban and Community Forestry, and CNRA Urban Greening both fund nature and green spaces in communities, and these can be strategically planned with housing development to provide green space, shading, cooling, stormwater control, and reduced energy costs to residents. There's much more, but I'll just cut it there. But thank you very much.
Great. Associate Secretary Sunan.
Thank you, Director Sefa. In follow-up to some of the comments that were made by Secretary Moss, I just wanted to touch on within priority 3 accomplishments. There's an item, there's an action 26 that calls to evaluate the overlap of health, housing, and climate change and explore options to leverage Medi-Cal funding and services to address needs of homeless, transitional housing, and those with needs for housing and supportive services. Just want to point out that Secretary Moss and Secretary Dr. Galley serve as co-chairs of the California Interagency Council on Homelessness. So that's been one forum to really delve deeply into how to address the housing and homelessness issues. But the Strategic Growth Council is also that forum to be able to share information out about what's happening and be open to creative ideas from council members and staff. So I just want to point out just a few things that have been happening over the past year between our Cal HHS agency, its member departments, including the Department of Healthcare Services, to continue to explore, develop, and implement options to leverage Medi-Cal funding, services, and providers to address homelessness, including first, as a part of the 5-year transformation of California's Medicaid program called CalAIM. CalAIM stands for California Advancing and Innovating Medi-Cal. I still have to look that up periodically on Google because if it gets beyond 3 or 4 letters, I have to do a refresh. But the 5-year transformation of the California Medicaid program has Medi-Cal managed care plans being able to offer 14 community supports to eligible Medi-Cal members, including certain housing-related services such as housing deposits, housing transition and navigation services, and housing tenancy and sustaining services. It's interesting that with this work taking place with the managed care plans, it's a matter of actively operationalizing this work to make sure that it's trust but verify, making sure that the managed care plans are held accountable for actually serving the Medi-Cal beneficiaries in their communities. Department of Healthcare Services is also concluding the Housing and Homelessness Incentive Program, which provided financial incentives to managed care plans to improve their capacity to connect members to housing services. Department of Healthcare Services is also allocating $1.5 billion through the Behavioral Health Bridge Housing Program to fund shelter and interim housing, rental assistance, and auxiliary funding in assisted living settings for people experiencing homelessness with serious behavioral health conditions. And lastly, in February of this year, California was selected to participate in the Federal Housing and Services Partnership Accelerator Initiative. The California core team is led by Cal HHS agency with Department of Healthcare Services in support with our Department of Aging, Department of Rehabilitation, and collaboration with the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency and the Department of Housing and Community Development. This accelerator will help California, along with 7 other states and the District of Columbia, unlock critical resources to reduce homelessness by strengthening partnerships across housing, disability, aging, and health sectors, accessing available federal programs and resources, and maximizing federal flexibilities to keep people healthy. So the common thread here, find creative ways to engage in finding federal funding opportunities, while at the same time we're actively engaged between our agencies and key departments to move the needle on these complex issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Any other discussion, comments? In
Chair.
none, oh,
Chair.
sorry.
Just a super quick note. that I can't recall if I mentioned at the outset, but obviously this is a really rich discussion and really feel frankly quite honored and privileged to be a part of the champion group for this priority area. And just wanted to note, Secretary Moss, Member Capretz, and Chair Acefa, and I will all meet in July. Thank you to the team for pulling that together. And I really look forward to debriefing this discussion and coming back to the council with more and coming back to staff with more direction on this, but really a rich discussion. So thanks.
Yeah, I agree. This is really important, robust discussion. Just before I forget, just going back onto the transfer of development rights, I would like staff to probably work with conservation. I think it's being revived again. We want to look at that opportunity because it is intersectional to the work that we do here between ag land and housing. So that's another opportunity, and perhaps have more discussion on that at the next. With that, Matt, any public comments?
We have no public comments on this item.
Great. So we will move now to what is item 7, I believe. Lost my agenda. So item 7 is a discussion on SGC's strategic plan annual update. So I'd like to invite Lynn.
Great. Thank you, Chair. And this is going to be a full team effort. So I will just tee it up. Just as a reminder, 1 year ago today, this council adopted SGC's first 3-year strategic plan. And so amazingly, we have come to the end of the first year. It happened so quickly. And so we are really pleased and excited to start by providing an update in terms of what progress has been made and what we achieved in the first year. We're going to center this discussion on the 5 goals, which centered community development, climate equity, and systems change, and really builds upon existing work throughout the council while creating strategies that address existing priorities and gaps. So before I hand it over to the team, I do want to mention that the strategic plan is advancing Governor Newsom's executive order that's requiring strategic plans developed by state departments to embed equity, address disparities, and increase opportunities for all. We also believe that it is in alignment with the governor's directive to maximize federal and state funding opportunities for California innovation and infrastructure projects. And also, we're really leaning in on the piece where the governor has been very clear about this being a year of implementation, and that the state is really making sure that financial awards turn into action and to outcomes. So today's updates, we are not by any means going to go through an exhaustive list of all of the items that we have achieved, rather highlight major milestones and core components of the strategy. And we would encourage everybody to take a look at the staff report and the linked documents, because that provides a really comprehensive overview of what the team has achieved in the first year of the strategic plan. Now, importantly, as we go through this update goal by goal, the staff are also going to share areas of prioritization for the next year, which is fiscal year 25-26. And then we're hoping that the discussion today with council really does center on this, really hearing your insights, areas for opportunity and collaboration, and areas that you would like us to prioritize as we then finish the planning for the next year of the strategic plan. And so with that, I will pass it now to our leadership team, starting with Amar, who will start with goal number 1. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. I get to kick us off today with Goal 1. Goal 1, as a reminder, is a space where we can talk about how we're grounding our investments in community-led infrastructure, planning, natural lands, agriculture, to ensure and enhance resiliency and sustainability across the state. So we can go to the next slide. There you go. As you can see, we have 5 major objectives. We have a ton of strategies in here. And as Lynn mentioned, there's an exhaustive list on all of our accomplishments that we've made this year and across the strategic plan. I'll highlight a couple of them. Some of you all are familiar with our large investments this year. We did over $1 billion across the Strategic Growth Council. Of that, we have major investments in the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, Transformative Climate Communities, Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program, and our Community Resilience Centers. This is all made possible, as I mentioned earlier, by a dedicated team across SGC with collaborative support from multiple agencies that are under the council purview. A couple of highlights to share. Round 7 from AHSC. We awarded $757 million to create more affordable housing. That includes over 2,500 affordable homes. It includes 100 plus zero emission vehicles, over 50 miles of bikeways, and over an immense amount of miles of improvements to sidewalks across the state. TCC Round 5 awarded nearly $100 million across 3 different grant types this year. This includes major reduction in GHGs and GHG emissions with 36,000 metric tons, equivalent to taking 8,000 plus vehicles off the road. This is really exciting as we're seeing the immense investments at the block level. For our SULC program, round 9, this was one of our larger awards at $116 million. This is something that was super exciting. We're permanently protecting approximately 50,000 acres of cropland and rangeland. This also includes the use and protection of Native American land for traditional resources. And for our inaugural year of the Community Resilience Centers, nearly $98 million across 24 projects across 3 different grant types. This is really expanding how we're thinking about community level, neighborhood level resilience in the face of extreme heat and other climate emergencies. As we just walked off of our discussion on Council Priority 3, our colleague and team within SGC has strategized multiple I would say strategies across our housing and climate and equity priorities. It is exciting to see as we go into year 2 how we're uplifting some of those priorities this year. As we think about some of the discussion earlier, we talked about site tours and visits and how we're thinking about being really connected to community. The Transformative Climate Communities was a space where we got to highlight and showcase some of those block level funding and getting partnerships from the federal government to see what these investments look like and how they actually align with Justice 40 goals. We were able to strategize and provide some solutions to our partners at the federal level, which included US EPA and included the Department of Transportation, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as the Council on Environmental Quality. We also had an opportunity this year with Solar for All. SGC is one of 4 state entities that received Solar for All from US EPA GGRF. With our award this year, we are going to be focusing on technical assistance, grant capital to develop capacity and the necessary needs to plan, access, and benefit from both distributed and residential solar. This also looks at community scale solar and storage and the strategic location of community solar and storage. Priorities for this year, I think we had a great discussion earlier on P3, and those are some themes that we're seeing across the strategic plan. For Goal 1, we are excited to see how the SGC investments portfolio are going to continue to strategize our alignment with broader goals related to housing, transportation, health, conservation, economic development through community wealth building, workforce development, and equity. We will use the Solar for All projects to create a bike lane of project opportunities that will support the rest of the California Solar for All investments, as well as finding those solutions to strategize with federal funding opportunities. We will also prioritize and maximize our solutions to create more effective grant programs, and those programs are under the council purview as well. This looks at reducing complexity and focusing on strengthening our partnerships across the state. We will also think about how we can enhance our funding targets or create new programs that, again, focuses our primary attention towards priority population and tribal communities. This includes our internal processes where we're going to look at streamlining our project analysis, our reporting, and our evaluation so that we can be more effective in our program discussion, so that we can also do more project management and really highlight the breadth of our climate projects that are being realized today. I'm going to go ahead and change it over to Adrian, who's going to talk about goal 2.
Hi, everyone. It's my first council meeting. I'm one of the new staff, so it's really a pleasure to meet you all. I'm excited to begin and start this work with the SGC leadership team. So let me just quickly go over goal 2 and some of the reasons that we have prioritized it, building capacity for climate action. First, we know that access to funding in California remains a significant area of inequality and inequity among communities. We've learned that technical assistance and capacity building programs have been shown to build community readiness to apply for and implement these public funds and really to proactively plan. We know that developing innovative pilot programs that tests approaches to building capacity are really a necessity. And as we see success in these pilots and as they demonstrate success, it's important to formalize them and create them into sustained programs. We know that SGC has developed meaningful relationships with communities throughout California, of course, and has supported planning and pre-development work that's well situated for historic federal investments that we've been speaking of today. And really that federal investment helps to address the climate crisis. And we know that philanthropic investments are often necessary to fund initiatives that the state cannot. Philanthropy helps build greater trust and collaboration, supports project planning and visioning, and grows the systems and structures communities need to thrive in the long term. So with that, let me, just as Amar did, just spend a little bit of time on some of the amazing accomplishments and work that we have been doing over the past year. First, to really build off of what Amar was speaking on, SGC awarded the following grant rounds to work towards Goal 2, Regional Climate Collaboratives Round 1, TCC Round 5 Planning Grants, CRC Round 1 Planning Grants, SALC Round 8 Capacity Building Grants, and the Tribal Capacity Building Pilot Program. And as Lynn shared during the Executive Director's Report, SGC's CASE team, in collaboration with the Governor's Office and California Energy Commission, is launching a capacity building program for the Imperial Valley. This is modeled after SGC's Boost program. And the goal is really to ensure, again, as Lynn mentioned, that the implementation of Lithium Valley brings significant community benefits to the region. Another accomplishment, SGC and the Institute for Local Government released a report highlighting the transformative impact of state investments in capacity building and technical assistance. The report details the outcomes of the second round of the Boost program. Boost helped a cohort of 7 cities leverage $500,000 in capacity building resources to secure an additional $25 million in state and federal grants. So just really want to emphasize that leveraging of dollars. SGC launched the Connecting Communities initiative. We're going to hear about that from me in the next item, and hired 2 positions to fill that team. So myself and Connecting Communities analyst, Atisha Singh, who's here today. And since December 2024, Connecting Communities has provided outreach to 49 communities across 18 projects to really prepare for federal funding opportunities. So just want to emphasize what the council was speaking about. We know that accessing these federal dollars are a big initiative. And so we're going to really speak about that next. So what's next? Looking ahead to next year for Goal 2. First, we're going to strategize and coordinate future funding opportunities for RCC, TCC, and CRC, those core programs, again, Amar mentioned. Connecting Communities will continue to refine its mobilization plan and framework while it provides technical assistance to additional programs in search of this federal funding. We're preparing for the 2025 Catalyst Conference, which is very exciting, and we're collaborating with external partners and agencies. Goal 2 will also facilitate greater coordination among SGC and other state programs to align policy and funding objectives with community needs and goals. We're going to evaluate all SGC technical assistance initiatives and coordinate with providers to maximize benefits to community during application, post-award, and implementation. And in accordance with Council Priority 2, SGC will be continuing to broaden its tribal program support to facilitate greater resource access and partnerships, as well as to promote advanced pay mechanism to agencies and communities. So now let me pass it along to Faye, another new staff, to speak about Goal 3.
Hi, thank you, everybody. My name is Faye. My pronouns are they and them. I just started as the new Deputy Director of Equity and Government Transformation. I'm excited to share with you about Goal 3, which is ideate, incubate, scale transformative approaches to climate equity, which really encapsulates the mission of SGC and being able to take our innovative pilots and turn them into practices and models that other state agencies can follow. Some of the accomplishments from the past year include the CCR team being able to leverage existing funding to support capacity building around the participatory research policy model. This facilitates deep community involvement across all phases of research. CCR was able to establish 3 capacity building initiatives in partnership with researchers across the state. The CASE team was also able to update our technical assistance toolkit to scale best practices for state entities and funders to provide technical assistance to grantees. SGC also launched 3 climate equity catalyst models in 2024, iterate and inclusive program design, collaborative governance, and multi-benefit projects, and these are found online. As mentioned, SGC was also able to host our 2024 Catalyst Conference, Progress in Place from Power Building to Project Development. This convened over 300 attendees across the country over 2 days to advance best practices, provide direct resources to advance climate equity. Following the conference, SGC was able to release our 2024 summary report. Lastly, we also onboarded a new role, SGC's Communications Officer, Tish, who is here today, who will develop a communications strategic plan to increase and streamline our strategic and culturally competent communications across our organization. In the coming year, some of our priority items will include organizing our 3rd annual Catalyst Conference to elevate best practices and advance community-driven solutions for climate equity across the state. In coordination with the Catalyst Conference, we will also share new Catalyst models to share tested policy models for equitable outcomes in under-resourced communities. We'll also seek to build capacity within the state to embed our participatory research and policy model for state-funded research, starting with promoting the outcomes and finding of the round 2 and round 3 to decision. SGC will also coordinate with the California 5th Climate Change Assessment Team to ensure the community participation and partnership across the regional and topical reports. And now I'll pass it to Sean to go over Goal 5 or Goal 4.
Okay, Goal 4. I should just note, this may sound a bit like a laundry list of stuff, but largely thanks to Lynn, we've done a lot of stuff in the last year. So it's anyway, Goal 4, then we have Goal 5, and then we'll wrap things up here. But Goal 4 is to improve government systems and structures to achieve a California for all. This goal aims to improve government systems and structures to achieve a California for all. To leverage SGC's unique cross-agency council structure to increase coordination and sharing of best practices to ensure greater access to public resources. So a few highlights here: the Community Assistance for Climate Equity, sorry, my voice. Or CASE team has established itself as a trusted resource for state and federal agencies seeking to provide technical assistance. The 2020 Technical Assistance Guidelines Overview webinar received nearly 50,000 views and is SGC's most watched video. CASE has also offered presentations and trainings to state agencies on structuring and implementing TA, and requests for guidance on developing TA programs continue to increase. SGC also administers the California Agricultural Land Equity Task Force, which was established in 2022 to develop recommendations to the legislature and the governor to equitably increase access to land for food production and traditional tribal agricultural uses. SGC has convened 3 task force meetings and continues to provide research, capacity building, and administrative support toward the development of the final recommendations. SGC built and continues to strengthen relationships with federal government and continues to share the catalyst models and other best practices lifted from SGC's programs and policy initiatives. Mentioned this briefly earlier, but SGC, in partnership with Civic Wells California Climate and Energy Collaborative, serves as co-chair of the State Local Energy and Climate Coordination SLEEK meeting series, more acronyms for you. This series, which convened just yesterday in Palm Springs, as I mentioned, now serves as a statewide communication and ideation hub to help state and local entities identify priority needs and co-create operational solutions to advance place-based energy and climate action. And finally, in response to upfront funding challenges faced by our grantees, SGC's grant programs have begun implementing advanced pay to eligible entities. AB 211 authorized SGC to provide advanced payment to qualifying awards to ensure effective implementation of the program. So as we continue to progress on this goal, some priority actions include continuing the support for the Agricultural Land Equity Task Force in developing its recommendations. And also a key area here is Council Priority 3, which we've already discussed at length, but looking forward to continuing that work, part of which is building a project pipeline to better position the state to access federal funding. I'll now pass it back to Faye. Thanks.
Great. So I'm glad to close this out talking about Goal 5. Goal 5 involves all of SGC, centering equity, thriving, resistance, and community. It is a big effort that is coordinated by our health equity program team, but all of the program teams are deeply engaged in the community as we ensure that we center community in all of our program areas. And we've seen great progress this past year. Among the accomplishments is the council adoption of SGC's second racial equity action plan for 2024-2027. The REAP involves all facets of SGC's organizations to undo systemic and institutional injustices, to prevent opportunity for all, to provide resources to support healthy, thriving, and resilient communities for all, the most at need Californians. In December of last year, SGC also shared an annual update on the progress on the REAP, which includes a detailed overview of how SGC's programs, policy initiatives, leadership, and operations embed racial equity. One example of the programmatic excellence in the space is shown through the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Programs, which extended its Round 9 guidelines process to research and develop recommendations to increase engagement and accessibility for tribal entities. Additionally, self-funding supported California tribes with land acquisitions, advancing the state's work in supporting tribal access, co-management, and acquisitions of ancestral lands. Self-investments from this round of funding will also provide pathways to land ownership and access to agricultural lands for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. The Capital Collaborative on Race and Equity launched the 4th core learning cohort this past year. This foundational racial equity capacity building program for state entities is facilitated by the State of Equity, which is a program of the Public Health Institute, and the Strategic Growth Council is the state co. Some of the priority items for the coming year include tracking the REAP goals and metrics across the organization, programmatic areas, and utilizing our interagency groups such as the Council, the Health and All Policies Task Force, and the Capital Collaborative on Racial Equity to coordinate our state efforts around racial equity. And SGC will also continue to coordinate our internal resources and learning opportunities to enhance our staff's understanding of racial equity and environmental justice principles. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Lynn.
Okay, thank you all. Amar, Adrian, Faye, Sean, appreciate those presentations, and also just want to recognize all of the program teams and staff who did a lot of the work that you just heard about, and were really the folks behind the scenes who are making these initiatives really come to life. Also, just very quickly, I wanted to thank our communications team as well. We really rely on the comms team to help us share and communicate this information, and so we really appreciate the effort there. And to our administrative, legal, and contracting teams for ensuring fair process. And for honestly, without them, this work does not get done. Their hard work and their contributions are so critical to being able to meet these collective goals. Now, moving forward, we look forward to the council discussion and really hearing from you all about how this work relates to your priorities and where there are places for continued effort and support. Just a little note that we are going to do a full discussion item on connecting communities at following this conversation. So just bear that in mind as you're thinking about your comments here. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Matt Reed for a reminder on public comment, and then look forward to the discussion with council.
Members of the public would like to comment on the item, please submit a public comment card at the front table. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings and complete the card. I will now pass it back to the chair.
Great, thanks, Matt. If we can move to council discussions, we're a few minutes behind, not too much, but if we could just focus the discussion on the 2 questions staff teed up. Question 1, which areas within the year 2 look ahead should SGC prioritize in the upcoming year? And then question 2, are there any gaps or opportunities for further alignment with your entity's strategic goals? So that open it up for discussion. I will start. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No. So question one, in the year look ahead, I think one of the things that we keep hearing again and again, especially at SGC as we engage with local jurisdiction, but the complexity of grants application and the grant programs. And it's very difficult to go through the maze of processes that community groups and organizations have to go through across all of our agencies, grant programs. So I think that is an important area for SGC to focus. How do we streamline and or provide technical assistance, which is great, but within each of our programs or across state agencies, can we minimize the excessive and complex processes for grants, access to grants. And then in terms of gaps, I think we can do at SGC, we can do more to consider the goals and plans of member agencies and make alignments with that, working together across our individual targets so that we connect the dots. We're at OPR exploring ways in which UC Berkeley could help review agency strategic plans and creating a dashboard of results so that we can compare and connect across the various funds. One of the issues is really alignment, and so that we collectively move and or advance a lot of these issues together without redundancy and duplication. So that's one effort I think we're looking for UC Berkeley to help us in that area. So those are the two areas that I think, focus over the next years up there. Deputy Secretary Keegan.
Thank you, Chair. Fantastic work, everyone. It's so nice to see the team effort in implementing this. Our comments are very similar to Chair Acefa's. We think there's a great opportunity for grant application streamlining to reduce complexities. And that I think there's two pieces there to consider the ways in which we can be flexible and also remove administrative barriers. We also wanted to stress the continued focus on supporting tribes across program areas to improve access to programs through meaningful engagement, technical assistance when that is desired by our tribal partners, in order to strengthen our government-to-government relationship. Building on that piece of technical assistance, from BCSH, we really appreciate the variety of programs that you offer to both meet communities with capacity building and also deep TA, and that you're thoughtful on how to support that process from application through implementation. And the Secretary wanted me to note how essential that is to maximize community impact. And with that, I really wanted to lift up the model of the work that SGC is doing in Lithium Valley in recent conversations that we've had. And that Secretary sent me a note before she stepped away, really to stress that we can think about how to account for community benefit, and not in a patronizing or othering way, but thinking about how to balance focus on economic growth, which is going to happen, in planning with existing communities. I've been saying this a lot recently. This isn't just about new opportunities and new residents, but there are needs in many communities right now, in communities that are going to see a lot of investments from infrastructure and some of our own work. And so also, just to wrap up, and I don't think it's a gap necessarily, but just the focus on equity, just as the chair said, really aligns across member agencies. And we want to keep exploring how SGC is coordinating with the Racial Equity Commission, in case that could help advance some of the work here. Thank you.
Great. Anyone? Councilor Munoz.
Thank you. Look, Lynn, I don't represent, as you know, I'm a public member. I don't have an agency per se, but I happen to work in the field of higher education. 23 campuses in the CSU, 116 community colleges, 10 in the UC, and then the various public privates. One of the gaps, and the chairman just said it to make my point, we were talking about UC Berkeley evaluating. There was a photograph of you all with the University Office of the President and its climate. I don't know of a higher ed institution that isn't talking about housing, climate, transportation, and sustainability, affordability, et cetera. And it just seems that so often there's the occasional presence of an institution of higher education. And I don't make any distinction between the value of a community college working with the tribal community or Berkeley working with SGC. But it just seems that it's not quite as deliberate. You and I have talked about our campus, or a campus being a pilot site for something, right? It just seems that that's an opportunity that hasn't been as carefully cultivated as it can be in terms of some of our programs, saying, is there a local, applicable, relevant institution of higher education that can be a part of X? Some of the most celebrated minds in the world in their fields are in California. Stanford or Berkeley or Cal State San Bernardino. And to not think about how to mine that resource. We have people coming from all over the world to study here on these campuses, and to not think about how to strategically use those assets for the growth and prosperity of our campus and the programs that SGC develops and promulgates, maybe could be a gap. So I'll just leave that with Matt and planted and the seed plant. And of course we say in the San Joaquin Valley, everything that's planted grows, Matt.
Thanks, Chancellor. And I think your institution is as big as, or maybe bigger than the state. So good to know that. Willing to engage, of course. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you so much. Thanks again for staff for the update on the strategic plan. It's often overwhelming to see all of it together in terms of all the work that SGC has been working on. So thank you so much for providing us with that update. Lots of exciting stuff going on. A lot of my comments touch on things that have already been said, but I just wanted to reiterate them. The comments around kind of streamlining grant processes, I think really resonate with our agency. We've seen an extraordinary amount of growth of discretionary federal programs, particularly in transportation, but obviously in other spaces as well. And I think the level of which the strain that is on local communities to keep up with and apply for so many disparate sources of funding, I think is probably at an all-time high. So thinking about streamlining from that perspective, from the applicant's perspective of what are they looking at? How do we not only streamline our processes, but I think maybe going a step further around actual alignment of some of our grant requirements? Like, are there opportunities to say, oh, maybe there's a federal definition that someone's already looking at for this type of thing? Can we just borrow that definition instead of making our own? Those types of opportunities I think are really, really important. And we're trying to look at those in the transportation space as well. I think in terms of other things to look at, I have a lot to say on federal opportunities, but I'll save that for the Connecting Communities conversation here in a bit. I think one thing, and this isn't necessarily a gap, I think there's a lot of this already in here, but really looking for opportunities, perhaps beyond the work that SGC is directly doing, but connections to work that other agencies, the member agencies you have up here, are doing that could really benefit from discussion by the council. I mean, we heard earlier, I think, about excitement around upcoming general plan updates, for example. Where are there really cross-sectoral opportunities where the council can be leveraged to accomplish some of the goals you name here, to ensure that there's input across administration on the work that we're doing. So I really see this body as an opportunity to have those discussions in a way that we can't necessarily in our own agencies. So those are some of the things that stood out to us, and yeah, and I'll save the rest for the connecting communities discussion.
Public member Carpretz.
Oh, great. Thank you, Chair. Some comments have really evoked thought, and love that everybody agrees the grant process is very challenging and time consuming, and all the disparate funding. Yes, thank you for highlighting that, is overwhelming. Can vouch for that for my own organization, but obviously I hear that from everybody in San Diego. And I know you heard when you all came down to San Diego. Thank you so much for coming down and for making that happen. You know, you heard from a friend and from Casa Familiar saying something similar. Even with technical assistance, it was overwhelming and draining. So anyhow, thank you so much. If that seems to be a feeling that everybody has, and it sounds like something might be done about that. I loved the idea, and I didn't grasp fully what I think you were saying, Chair Sefa, or somebody was saying about dashboards. When I was talking earlier about it's, yes, we're making progress. The state is doing some good things, but just the bigger picture, the overarching reality of the climate crisis is devastating. I don't think anybody in any community in California doesn't see it in their own backyard, how devastating it is and just how scary it is. And it's hard because any dashboard or any report I've seen does not show that we're on the path to a safe and healthy climate in California, and not even speaking to whether we're even ready and climate resilient. So I just feel like some kind of transparency and honesty and accountability about that. It's not that it's anybody's fault. There's no one person to blame. Obviously, we're all in this together, but I think just having honest conversations resonates with the community more than just bragging or saying, oh, we've done all these great things. But yes, your backyard's still on fire. Yes, you're still suffering extreme heat. And, yes, homeowners insurance is unaffordable, and we don't know how we're going to navigate that. I mean, there's just so many things that are out there that are overwhelming, and I think they should be discussed openly and honestly. So anyhow, I don't know exactly how dashboards could fit in that, but I do think like an easily accessible, transparent sort of accounting of where we're at would be amazing. And then finally, Councilmember Munoz, I loved your comment about the state really seeking out new voices in some of your partnerships. That's something I've noticed. I've now been on the council, I think 5 or 6 years. I don't exactly know how that's happening or why, but yeah, I'm just going to stay here until I get replaced, and that's fine. But it does seem like the same universities, the same organizations are tapped by the state, and there could be pre-existing relationships. And I know people go from different state agencies to, universities, but I just think being mindful of that there are a lot more talented people and organizations and institutions that you might not be as familiar with, or you're not, you don't have that connection with as easily. I think the state would benefit from kind of being a little bit more intentional. I do agree with Councilmember Munoz that that's a gap that I have noticed. And that goes for CBOs too. There's a lot of CBOs I don't see elevated into some of the into some of the conversations that we have at the state. And again, I don't think it's anybody trying. It's not nefarious. I think it's just familiarity. So again, it's just an idea to keep pushing and like, hey, do we have any organization from Orange County that we're working with on a regular basis? And I just say that because that's partly where my organization works, but it just, there continue to be some gaps about who you work with in California on a more consistent basis. And otherwise, that's all I got, Chair. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Nicole. I think that's Oh, sorry. Okay, let me answer one of her questions and then I'll go to you. So the dashboard basically is in part to have plan alignments so that they are transparent. So they would address transparency issues. And then it could be a way to track results as well and accountability. We're doing something similar with the state's infrastructure strike team. The governor created just over a year ago. So we're putting all state agencies and their infrastructure from broadband to transportation and all the different infrastructure related outcomes so that we have a dashboard that is tracked, identified both for transparency, but also for accountability. Some form of that kind of dashboard is what we're thinking to work with UC Berkeley for developing. So with that, Deputy Secretary Schwartz.
Thank you. So I think, like the rest of my colleagues, grants is just front and center. CNRA gives, has distributed billions in grant funding, and we have a number of agencies that distribute grants. And one of the things, we had our first Environmental Justice and Equity Summit in March, and we brought together state leaders, invited environmental justice advocates and tribal members, and our EJ and equity leads across all of our departments. And one of the things that really kind of surfaced during those discussions is that as much as, we're doing as much as we can on grants, and we're really trying to make sure that we get this money into underserved communities as much as possible, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And there are still, gaps, and some of our departments are well ahead of some of the other departments, and there's just a lot that we need to do. And one of the things that, I've been thinking about a lot is that, just the technical assistance piece. I mean, for a lot of underserved groups, they don't have a lot of capacity, right? And that's something that we hear over and over again. But these grants are becoming more competitive, and it's very difficult for them to apply to these grants. And, every department has, different requirements and different applications. And I just keep thinking that there's got to be a better way to do this. We need to make sure that this funding goes to where it's most needed. And do we need more, meaningful engagement training for grant staff? Do we need, better applications? I mean, there's just so much that we could be thinking about and really considering. And, right now, I think at least, for a lot of these community groups, the grant staff are, they're the gatekeepers, right? They're the ones that are deciding, like, okay, do you get this funding or not? But is there another way to do it, right? And I had a conversation with somebody who said, in New York, they have a different system where it's more like a common app, that they fill out a common app, and then internally, that application is sort of looked at, and they match the project to the grant. And then the staff is more, providing technical assistance. And that kind of blew my mind. I mean, it was such a different way of doing that. So I'm just sort of thinking out loud here. But this is something that I've really been thinking about a lot, because this is, we talk about like all the things that we want to do in these communities and how we want to fix all of the problems. And, here we've got all this funding, and we need to figure out, like, how do we get it to these communities, and how do we really help these people, and what the barriers are. And it just seems to me that there's just got to be a better way to do this. So, I would really love to see, SGC staff are so brilliant. I'd really love to see, what kind of innovative ideas, we can come up with there to just make it easier for folks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the New York model is sort of the gold standard in a way that really takes all complex and multiple grant systems, but they're basically accessed through a single portal, which makes it so much easier. Grantees on the other side. Secretary Sunan.
Thanks, Richard. I'll keep this brief because I realize we're pressed for time. But I just wanted to put on SGC and staff's radar is the topic of language access. And I know this is actively being worked on. It's a priority that was embedded in the governor's executive order calling for the creation of the California Racial Equity Commission. And LHHS agency and Government Operations Agency will be taking the lead to develop models for how and sharing best practices on how language access plans can be developed. And I think that the work with the SGC would be helpful to help be a forum sharing that type of information. With our agency having 15 departments and offices, they have each submitted a language access plan by June 1st where each department and office will have a web page explaining their language access plan on their homepage. So our agency, in collaboration with GovOps, can share best practices, lessons learned, because there's truly a tangible, compelling need for these services, and in doing this in a way, as Secretary Moss said, that is easy to understand, it's accessible and understandable. And then when you do the language access translation or American Sign Language, that you're doing it in a way that's culturally and linguistically appropriate. So I'll pause there. Thanks.
Yeah, so just want to first say that we really appreciate the holistic view that SGC has really taken and captured in this strategic plan. And one thing that kind of tees off of some of the conversations around, dashboards and accountability and transparency, wanted to ask about really is, as part of the governor's equity executive order, there's a part in there about that agencies that develop strategic plans include data analysis and inclusive practices to advance equity. And to engage and gather input from communities. And so wanted to just, ask the question here of sort of whether it's for these sorts of annual updates or even for the development of the next round of the strategic plan, really how SGC plans to gather that internal equity data and display it for the public. And then also on the engagement piece, how will SGC work with communities and tribes to ensure that the strategic plan is meeting their needs? So I think that really, connects to so much of the work that you all do with various programs, but I think thinking about the strategic plan holistically and how that's working for communities, I think would be a really worthwhile thing for SGC staff to continue exploring. And then just on the second question, just a note that Cal EPA is actually in the process of updating our own strategic plan, and that we hope to be able to share that out in the next few months, and happy to share that with all of you. And just from how we're grounding our strategic plan in the various areas, there's a lot of opportunity for overlap, and where there's a lot of shared priorities and shared interests. We're working on securing a safe and sustainable water supply, improving air quality and moving toward carbon neutrality, reducing waste and catalyzing investment in a circular economy, and then prioritizing vulnerable communities. So there's really just, a lot of alignment there. So looking forward to staying connected with SGC as that strategic plan gets rolled out. Thank you.
That's it. Cardenas.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I think it's just important to just kind of take a step back and just kind of look around yourself and say, oh my God, isn't this just amazing? So 2 years ago, this month, my first meeting, executive director, who had been here all of like 10 months, I think, as executive director, if I'm not mistaken, she leans forward and changes this council forever, and says that she intends to start a strategic planning process. And as a part of this, we're going to have a conference every year where we bring together stakeholders and we talk about, ideating, incubating, and scaling, and then we do it. And, here we are 2 years later, and look at the vehicle that we have, right? For ideas and for incubating and for scaling and for action. Deputy Secretary Schwartz said, at some point, what'd you say? I'm just throwing out ideas here, or I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just thinking out loud here. Well, you know what's going to happen is in the not too distant future, the legacy that our executive director has left, they're going to come back to us, right, with specific plans on how to move forward with your open musings, which were so rich and latent with possibility. And Secretary Brother Munoz's call to please let us go beyond Davis and Berkeley and Luskin. Brilliant, right? But let's go back to Merced. I remember Liz Grassi walking me through some of the community-centered research that had been done by some of your professors, man, at Merced. Lynn knows I just started a new engagement after teaching 10 years in the Cal State system, another beautiful system. I've stepped away so I can focus on trying to do this project at one of the jewels of our community college system, which is Pasadena City College. Include PCC, my alma mater, East LA College. There is genius all over the state. So, and the great thing is that Lynn is going to leave, which sucks, but she's going to leave, and her staff that has learned from her example is going to continue to come back, right, and show us the way forward, and that is legacy, that is leadership, and that is Lynn. So what she started, guys, just keep it going.
Matt, do we have any public comments?
We have one in-person public comment on this item. I'm going to read the name of the individual signed up to provide comment on this item, and if they could come to the podium. Leanne Dillon. With us, if you could come up to the podium and provide your public comment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Leanne Dillon here with the State of Equity, where I'm a racial equity strategist. My pronouns are she, her. Did you want to? Okay. Liberty wanted to be here more than at summer camp. So shout out to y'all for hosting like a super exciting conversation. So there's a lot to celebrate that's in this strategic plan, and absolutely celebrating the legacy of past leaders and like getting this going. And I think the theme from our perspective at State of Equity, really centering on the racial equity work that you all have been doing and that state agencies have been doing, is that now is not the time to dial that back or to slow down, but to continue to embed that work, elevate that work, be a beacon of hope for the rest of the nation, be a beacon of light as diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and racial equity efforts are under very strategic and significant attack. And so like during this moment of hostility, right, really coming back with messaging that is clear around the values and the priorities of the council. For the August session, it would be great to have a conversation that's a deeper dive on how the members and also the rest of the enterprise are elevating racial equity in their work. And then somebody mentioned the Racial Equity Commission, but absolutely there's a huge opportunity to partner with that commission, to elevate their work and to like co-mingle, right, the staffing and the energy around that in support of racial equity. Budgets have been tight before. It's not like a new thing, right? Now's not the time to shrink our vision. There are amazing staff out there that are doing this work, and continuing to support them is really important. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no additional public comment.
Great. Yeah, thank you for the comments. We will now move to item 3, which is another discussion item, this one on SGC's Connecting Communities Initiative overview and framework. Now I'd like to invite the team, SGC team.
Please, and I will just hand it straight over to Adrian and just say we're really excited. Adrian and Natisha have just hit the ground running. So I'm really, really excited for you to see what they're bringing forward today and for us to have the conversation around what next.
Okay, I realize we're at the end of the day here, so I will try to bring some energy into this initiative because it's new, our team is new, and so we're really excited and just want to thank you for the great conversation today. I think I can speak on behalf of our team and the audience that we're very, very inspired by the comments, especially around this pathway to federal funding, because that is connecting communities. So, Connecting Communities Initiative was announced towards the end of 2023, really with the intent to build on SGC's history of catalyzing public and private investment in frontline communities. So what Connecting Communities is planning to do is, like we've spoken about a lot today, is getting our SGC grantees and applicants and accessing those federal dollars that are available, really developing strategic collaborations with philanthropy, private funding sources, and thought partners. We're going to use our proven strategies to advance community climate leadership, and we're going to convene climate equity leaders to this initiative. So if we go to the next slide, we can just really understand this initiative was born out of the convergence of the items you see on the slide here. First, we know there's a ton of money coming from the federal government, right? At the same time, we have a state budget deficit. So we're in this constant ebb and flow of available funding. Similarly, at the same time, facing chronic oversubscriptions from SGC programs. So we know the demand is there. Just want to highlight a few examples of this in Amar's portfolio. So the TCC program had $159 million in funding requests with a total notice of funding availability, or NOFA, of $99 million in round 5. The CRC program received $685 million in funding requests with a NOFA of $99 million. The RCC program received requests for $66 million on a NOFA of $8.3 million in round 1 and requests for $52 million on a NOFA of $8.5 million in round 2. So again, the demand is there. So we are also guided by the administration, of course, who's highlighted increasing our state's competitiveness for federal funding as a strategic goal. So when you take all these factors into consideration, you have to look at the historic underinvestment for our frontline communities. So these under-resourced communities often lack the staff capacity, the partnerships, or resources to secure this competitive funding and implement projects and policies. So if I may quote Public Member Capretz earlier in the conversation during item 6, when we were talking about federal funding, she said, we know we need new tools and to think bigger and brighter. So Connecting Communities is one of the outlets we have to do just that. So if we move to the next slide, we know this can't be a static initiative, right? We want it to serve as a living model so it can really adapt to all the things you see on the screen, our existing infrastructure, changing external forces, budget fluctuations, new technology, partners, and evolving community needs. We really feel like Connecting Communities sits kind of at the center of this ecosystem. So you move to the next slide, we'll see that, of course, we're guided by you as the council and also the strategic plan. So Connecting Communities has kind of a through line, really emphasizing goal 2 and in goal 3, but all throughout the strategic plan is connecting communities. So to implement this initiative, if we'll move to the next slide, we have a dedicated team and are supported by external partners and consultants. So myself and Atisha Singh, who's in the audience today, are really going to closely collaborate with our SGC program team. So I really just want to take a quick moment and recognize our summer interns, Waverly and Rohan, who are in the audience, as well as Executive Fellow Camille Randolph, who are also supporting this initiative. So we're a small but mighty team. We also have a 3-year contract with Horn, who serves as our technical assistant consultant and supports SGC program applicants and awardees in getting their applications to these federal programs. So also want to highlight that Marissa Like Kim is here from Horn today, so squad's all here. We also have several existing strategic partnerships that are thought partners and or funders, and we hope to see that right-hand side of the equation grow. So the goals of this initiative are on the next slide. Again, to support grantees and unawarded applicants in accessing these federal dollars, both through technical assistance, but also the mobilization of financial and other resources, which we'll get into. We want to advance strategic collaborations with philanthropy and private partners to leverage and enhance our investments and create more sustainable funding mechanisms for our communities, and really accelerate these community-led practices statewide. So if we go to the next slide. So to accomplish these goals, we have created 3 distinct pillars in this framework. Providing technical assistance, diversifying our resources by mobilizing federal funding opportunities and other resources, and developing these strategic collaborations. We feel like these pillars can really be pivotal in getting resources to communities who need them most and kind of level the playing field. So I'm going to quickly go through each of these, starting with technical assistance. So we knew through the federal government that funding will be provided in the form of grants, loans, tax incentives, and more. And so we're going to support that. We are currently taking grantees of SGC programs and unawarded applicants through technical assistance for project development, grant review, and other tailored resources. That's in collaboration with our consultant Horn. So let's just go through a quick example of this. The US EPA Community Change Grant is an example of one of these federal funding programs. That's $2 billion that's being distributed to communities to reduce indoor and outdoor air pollution. And this national program is modeled after SGC's TCC program. So really, what a great pipeline for us to go into this federal program. But because many of our TCC grantees and former TCC applicants have already developed projects, plans, community partnerships, and processes, they lack the funding to move to the next step. So we are providing technical assistance right now to interested TCC communities, and we've been doing that since early this year. So you can see on the screen here that since the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, Horn has conducted outreach to 49 total applicant teams across 18 different projects. So you can see the 18 projects reflected through the active technical assistance and submitted categories on the bar chart there. And we're proud to say that in that short time, 4 projects have already been submitted to the EPA grant. So on the next slide, we can just quickly see that this is through a variety of different project types, from complete streets to electric buses to workforce development. And I just want to dive in a bit on those 4 applicants if we move to the next slide. So these are from TCC's Round 5 implementation grants, and they've been submitted for approximately $20 million each for the federal EPA grant. And we're so excited to say that already we've heard 3 of the 4 of these on the screen have moved to the interview round. And we know that they'll hear in a few weeks if they make it to the kind of final scoring and award. The 4th is just in the second wave of EPA's recognition. So we hope to hear back about that one soon. So we have a pipeline of additional projects that are preparing to submit to this grant specifically, but we're actively prioritizing and gearing up other SGC programs to participate in this grant program, but other opportunities we're seeing through Justice 40. So we go through the next slide. This is the second pillar, our mobilization plan and really diversifying our resources. So for the council, I just want to draw your attention to attachment A. It's printed at your seat. The slide is an exact representation of what you have printed in front of you. So in addition to the active EPA grant we mentioned, TCC and our other SGC programs have projects that are a potential match for other Justice 40 opportunities. So to that end, we've developed this mobilization plan to accomplish a few things. First, to support our core SGC programs and identifying and applying to these federal funding opportunities or other resources that can augment that work. We want to identify the continuation and gap filling for SGC's skills, pilots, and initiatives. So the mobilization plan includes various federal funding programs and resources that we plan and are starting to explore. So let's just start with our core programs, which are the first page of attachment A and also what you see on your screen right now. TCC, CRC, RCC, all of our acronymed core programs have exhausted their local assistance grant funding. So I want to say that just one more time. They've exhausted their local assistant grant funding. So they still have operational funding until 2027, but our policy commitments and clearly the demand that I emphasized earlier, this just really necessitates us to explore a more sustainable and continued funding mechanism for these programs. So as you can see in the rightmost column, we've started to identify and consult on opportunities we should investigate, plan to investigate to help continue these valuable programs. So we'll move to the second slide, which is the backside of attachment A. We similarly feel that initiatives like tribal access expansion and the BOOST program could really benefit from staffing, from philanthropic and support, or again, federal dollars. So you'll notice there's a lot of blank areas here, right? This chart feels small, but it's just the start. So we want to facilitate new partnerships. We want to learn of open grant opportunities ourselves, and we really want to collaborate with your agencies as council members to develop continuity across all of these different programs. So I do just want to, again, take a second to do some call outs. First, I want to thank Darwin and the entire CalSTA team for being the first to meet with Connecting Communities. One, just to introduce the program and give great feedback, but also to just have an open line of continued brainstorming and collaboration. We really, really appreciate that. Not only did we talk about specific opportunities that we could collaborate on, for example, you see on the screen and in the attachment, the US DOT Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or TIFIA program. We chatted about that, how that could be an opportunity of us potentially collaborating, and how if we align on opportunities like that, we could strengthen our state's application to some of those programs. We also discussed looking at opportunities in a more programmatic lens to meet some of these goals and our state's unique needs. And my second call out is to CDFA. Again, just thank you for serving as a channel to brainstorming, but we have also already met with CDFA's grant administration team. So taking this a step further, they have not only just mentioned some opportunities that we should look into that aren't formulaic, but also really have offered support to us if we as SGC plan to apply for federal opportunities. So those types of partnerships are what we're going to continue to do, not just externally with private sources, but with your agency. So I just want to encourage your agencies to meet with us, and thanks again to both of your teams for that. And then if we move to the next slide, we'll get to the final pillar, which is strategic collaboration. So Connecting Communities will collaborate with cross-sectoral strategic partners in our core areas of work. These partners can include private and philanthropic partners, CBOs, governments, tribal communities, and much more. The list is almost endless. So an example of this type of strategic collaboration and partnership is our $0 contract with the Milken Institute. By forming this really strong relationship with them, we have now access to a great new tool that Milken has developed, where SGC's program applicants can utilize the new community infrastructure tool that Milken created. And it's a dedicated project development platform. It connects project sponsors to grant opportunities. So just want to emphasize what Deputy Secretary Schwartz was saying about that matchmaking component. And this was an outcome of the 2024 Catalyst Conference. So we know that these types of convenings are working and really helps augment the technical assistance we talked about earlier. So let me pause to say we're really excited to announce 2025 Catalyst Conference is happening. It will be under the purview of the Connecting Communities Initiative. So lots more to come. We're aligning again with the Milken Institute for this. And I'm happy to say we're moving. 2025 will be in Los Angeles. So after 2 great years in Sacramento, we're taking the show on the road, if you will, and going to a different area of the state. So we'll bring lots more to you. We're really excited about that. Okay, what's next? Last slide, please. What are we going to do after this, right? This is a framework, so it's new. We're going to continue to evolve it in collaboration with your agencies and internally as well. And then we're going to build an action plan, the kind of nuts and bolts of this, if you will. And that will be guided by our strategic plan, our SGC's racial equity action plan, and SGC's new strategic communications plan, really bringing all of these elements together to guide our work going forward. Of course, we're going to prepare for the 2025 Catalyst Conference and just really extend SGC's already great work with all of these external partners and agencies. So next, let me go to the discussion question. So what's missing? We'd love to hear that from your group. Are there other skills, initiatives that you think we need to include? How can we best coordinate and collaborate with you? I mentioned we've started to do this, but would love to hear how we can do that in a really thoughtful way as we're thinking about our frontline communities first. And then what other information can we get to you? How can we be most helpful as we're building out this initiative? So following Matt's reminder on public comment, we want to turn it back over to Chair Asafa. Thank you.
Thank you. For anyone wishing to provide public comment on this item, please either fill out a comment card in person at the table near the back of the room or online at sgc.ca.gov/meetings.
Do we have any public comments?
We have no public comments.
Oh, great. So I'll open it up to council discussion. But first of all, I'll say, Adrian, welcome. I think you did pretty well on your first and second presentation. Open it up for discussion, and the staff's questions are on the screen. On Councilmember Capretz.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd also like to welcome Adrian. Needless to say, I love your energy. I feel like we have Lynn 2.0 coming up. And I've already texted your information to like 3 people in San Diego who missed winning some of the grants in Orange County that are eager to see if there are other opportunities. So just your presentation, your energy, your enthusiasm, your optimism, and is just what CBOs need, especially those, like everyone has already said, devoted hours and hours into their grant applications and didn't quite make the cut. And, you know, we're so heartbroken, but it's just the fact that you all are creating this opportunity for people to potentially connect to other funding is very uplifting. And I just know this is just the beginning, like you said, and I'm very excited about that. Just speaking from people on the ground in the community who are so eager to take advantage of this funding. So yeah, you should be getting some calls from some frontline organizations. Maybe now, maybe while you're here, just in the audience, they're already texting you, or not texting you, sorry, emailing you. But anyhow, thank you. This is super exciting. Thank you, Lynn, and everybody else who made this happen. And yeah, very wonderful to hear about.
Thanks, Nicole. Vice Chair Cardenas.
Yeah, so, all right, Lynn. Now we know why you feel confident leaving. Thank you. Particularly interested, where do you see opportunities for growth and synergies and action with respect to philanthropic entities?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Much appreciated. So we're starting to build up that muscle. I think our case team is a really great representation of starting to collaborate with philanthropy. And so we need to first look internally to the existing relationships and partnerships we have. So we're starting to do that. Another example is we had on the slide as one of our partners, the James Irvine Foundation. We received a grant from them that we're incorporating into this technical assistance work, really focused on the workforce development component and community engagement. So that's another way where we can receive funds. SGC is uniquely positioned in that way. So I think the opportunity is ripe, right? I think part of what we need to do going forward is really determine some prioritization. There are not enough people, grants. I mean, there is so much need for this type of work. And so we really feel like we have to lean on philanthropy and other private and public entities to help support this. So that mobilization plan, I think, is one way to incorporate philanthropy, leaning on our SGC internal work that already has been done, and then exploring other opportunities that we can have, either applying for grants, strengthening relationships or partnerships, or through some of this convening like the Catalyst Conference. And then maybe, I don't know if Lynn had anything to add to that.
Where's the next conference going to be?
Los Angeles.
That's all I'm saying.
Deputy Secretary Musavi, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks again for the presentation, and yeah, we were very excited to be the first ones to chat with you about this. You can tell that we were really enthusiastic to see this initiative launched. You know, I do want to acknowledge that I feel like, although this is a formalization of this work, that this is work that SGC has been doing for years, all the technical assistance and the pieces and connecting folks, and not leaving a grant application or a grant award as just a grant award, but a relationship with those applicants. So really excited to see kind of a more of a formalization of that and a growth of an actual program around it. So really looking forward to that. I just wanted to make a comment around the coordination and collaboration piece. Many of the programs, federal programs named here, much like the ones at DOT that we offered up, are ones that other agencies across the administration are also coordinating around and submitting applications for, either directly or working with local agencies to do so. And I know from talking to federal partners that they always like to see a unified voice from states in terms of applications, instead of California having a disparate amount of applications that, well, some have state support, some don't, some have it from one agency, but not the other. So just wanted to maybe add a component or pillar to the work here that's really around coordination around our messaging of support for applicants, and making sure that, whether that's through support letters that are going out, or other more formal application processes, that we're really working across our agencies to make sure that we're being strategic and thoughtful about what we're submitting to what grant, and what that means for applicants that may not have been in a particular pipeline but are applying through another agency. So beyond that, yeah, really thanks again for the presentation and for bringing that exciting energy at 3:55 at the end of the council meeting. So thank you.
Deputy Secretary Cragen.
Hi. Building on what my colleague just shared, I'm just reflecting on the Catalyst conferences, the key staff conversations on this dais that have led us to where we're at today. So glad to have you on the team, and to bring you into some of these conversations. Like SGC programs, BCSH departments have had programs that are 5, 6, 10 times oversubscribed. And reflecting on what the secretary was sharing in Council Priority 3, to a community member, to a CBO, like who Councilmember Capretz represents, folks are like, we need housing and climate investments and all these things. And I don't want to go through 16 doors to be able to access this. So I can see the spirit of collaboration still built in here. And just to affirm what Darwin just said, we need to be careful to not step on each other's toes here. And so I think to the extent that we can build on some of the tables that we already have, where we're sharing data about these existing pipelines so that we're bringing comprehensive investment. TCC has often funded housing developments. We have public land that's in there. That's the work that we've been working on to try and lift up how we can access some of the federal money from the TIFIA program. That is not for the faint of heart. They are still building the program right now, and we have a lot of history in our state about housing, transportation, and community coordination that we're going to need to bring to bear. So look forward to working with you on that. And that it's going to be for a longer phase, because I think we're looking about a 3-year implementation of that. So looking forward to that very much. And also, I know the whole state team has been working on exploring thoughtful and intentional ways to build strategic relationships with external partners like community-based partners and philanthropy. And so we look forward to working with you on that. Thanks so much.
Deputy Secretary Zat.
Thank you, Chair. So really appreciate all of the work that staff did for coordinating this effort and for all of the capacity building and work that's been done to date. And I guess one of the questions that we had is just on tribal support and this community with this program in particular. It would be really great to understand if you foresee any limitations for California tribes, in getting connected to some of these funds, given that many are federal funding opportunities, and not all of the tribes, as we know, are federally recognized. And so just would love to get SGC's thoughts, whether here or at a later date, right, of once you've had a chance to sort of think through just how the plan might be to fill those gaps. I think that would be really, really good to have that clearly defined so that when we are getting, applicants who are California tribes who might not be eligible for that federal funding, how can we still be providing them support as part of this initiative? So that's one point to make. And then just on the second question of where there's opportunities to coordinate, just want to say that, similar to SGC, Cal EPA has, we have our environmental justice action grant program, which was also really severely oversubscribed. We had almost 200 applicants and we were only able to award 27 to 27 grantees. And there's a lot of those projects there that are climate projects that really align with the work that SGC does and also those federal funding opportunities. So it'd be really beneficial to further collaborate in that space and to help set up those applicants for success for other funding. So would love to keep the conversation going on that front. And then just lastly, on the third question, I think no really additional information requested at this time, but just that it would be great to hear about the lessons learned from this initiative once it's finished, and so that we can all learn and be able to apply those lessons learned across our agencies and the various programs that we all manage. Thank you.
I could quickly touch on your first question back to us just about tribes. So I think generally across all of our communities, tribes included, of course, there is a level of burnout, if you will, and that's a simplification, of course, but just this constant need to build your own internal capacity, but also identify partners, have the time and resources to apply for these grant opportunities. So I think one thing that we can do, especially for tribes who are interested in this work, is explore beyond just state and federal funding resources. So it might not just be dollars and cents, but it's other types of resources. How can we help build their capacity? How can we help just with convening? How can we help with staffing to help with these opportunities? So there's a lot of pre-work that I think can be done. And then when we get to the actual funding opportunities themselves, that's what we're hoping to explore. There's a lot that we don't know yet, but we think we need to look beyond just what's available at the federal level, and hopefully building up some of these partnerships can help with that. So there's a lot more to come, and hopefully we can bring back to you some extensive work in this mobilization plan that addresses the skills and initiatives that we have focused on tribes. And I do just want to make sure that if any of my colleagues up here wanted to add to that, they could. But yeah, we'll be certainly coming back to you with more.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Anyone else? I'll go ahead. Just a couple of comments. I think this is one of the most sort of exciting work, I think, heading into 2024 and 2025 for a couple of reasons described, the oversubscription of our grant programs, times of budget shortage like we are now. But more importantly, I think what we discussed earlier at some point, this unprecedented investment that's coming from the federal government. And we have 10 years to really take advantage of that, and that getting, that kind of support to community so that they can take advantage of, especially infrastructure related funding, is just so timely. So in terms of the questions around gaps, one of the ideas we discussed is whether or not, local matching funds could be incorporated in this. I don't know that would work within the state constitution. Places like Colorado do that. Similar non-federal matching funds as sort of another area for supporting the gap. In terms of coordination and collaboration, I think the model that we are working on now to access DOE grants, between SGC, Energy Commission, and GoBiz, partnership fundings. Are there opportunities for those kinds of partnerships across our agencies here? Those are the two I can think of. But going back to my first comment, I think this is just a timely initiative to double down on as we move into this year and next. Any other comments, colleagues? No.
We have no public comments on this item.
Okay. Now we'll move to take public comments for matters not on the agenda. Unfortunately, this is not a forum for dialogue with the council members. Any questions posed during this period of public comments can be directed to Executive Director Lynn Bangkok-Libert, who's not going to be here. She'll pass it on to Matt. So Matt will be able to respond to that. And so for any required follow-up. So with that, Matt, do we have any public comments?
Thank you. We have no in-person public comment signed up for this item, and we have 2 individuals signed up for virtual public comment. When you hear your name, please raise your hand in the Zoom. You can do this by clicking the raise hand function under the participants menu, which you can find at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom platform, or by pressing *9 if you're joining by phone. Please raise your hand when I call your name. And I'm going to read both names off first because we just have the 2 commenters. So Martha Armas Kelly or Christine Vitarelli. If you are in the Zoom, if you could please raise your hand. Okay, we're not seeing any raised hands in the Zoom, so I think that they've actually logged off. So we don't have any public comment on this item virtually.
Great. So we'll move to our last agenda. This is the adjournment. But before we do that, I want to incorporate into this meeting official dedication of this meeting to honor and recognize the significant contributions of 2 of our esteemed members, individuals with our organizations who are living. First, we talked about Lynn for a while, in the beginning. And then second, Lois Kim, our esteemed project specialist. So both Lynn and Lois have been invaluable members of our team for the past 3 years and are now both concluding their tenure with us. We are deeply grateful for their dedicated efforts, which have had a profound and lasting impact on our organization, furthering our community engagement and extending our influence across the state and nation. And I would say the world as well, because some of the work that we're doing here has been recognized outside of the United States. I just came back from Armenia talking about some of the innovative work that is being done here and how they can incorporate those kinds of ideas. And local leaders in Armenia have heard about some of the transformative work that is being done here. During her tenure here, Lynn led our organization in developing the first REAP and adjacent priorities and implementing the first strategic plan, as we mentioned earlier. And she adeptly devised funding strategies that bolstered our investments in philanthropic and federal opportunities and was instrumental in orchestrating the Catalyst Conference. And Lois has played a pivotal role in orchestrating and overseeing 17 of our council meetings, including 2 held offsite. She is recognized for her exemplary planning acumen, skillfully coordinating site visits with our community partners, and showcasing their invaluable work. And additionally, she has been at the helm of organizing the 2023 and 2024 SGC Catalyst conferences and has recently taken on the factory built housing pre-development pilot program. And at a personal note, I think from the first day I met Lois here, I was more impressed by her passion around this work, tireless engagement, attention to detail, all driven by your passion to this work, one, and driven by your not only people skills, but your support of people at all levels within the organization. And that has been an incredible asset to our organization. A lot of people are going to miss you from both from SGC and OPR, as well as our sister agencies that we have been engaging with. So with that, I would like to invite both of you here. I think our council members have some flowers to present to you, and we want to take pictures, and then I'll adjourn the meeting after that. Can we have you up here, please? Yes, absolutely. With that, I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody, for being here.